Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Lost His Beloved and Became Evil Doctor Strange Supreme movie. Before we start, please go support Guerrero Legends for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. It's funny, don't you think, how a simple event, a small change can change the flow of history in the world and in the entire universe, even destroying it. And that was what happened with our great hero Issei Hyoudou, who lost what he loved most in the whole world thanks to an event that he never thought would happen, and all thanks to a simple jealousy. Chapter 1 narrates, during my long existence I have been wandering through the multiverse, observing how a moment, a decision can impact space and time, giving birth to new stories, heroes, worlds, entire universes. But what would happen if the wrong decision is made? What would happen if the best intentions bring somewhat strange consequences? Well, that was all I could see in this universe. But surely you are wondering, who am I? Well, I am the Watcher. Now join me to see what is happening in this universe. Normal narration. It was a rather cold and beautiful night in a rather strange city, as you could see several people with bat, crow, and dove wings flying through the air, in addition to there being others walking with animal characteristics and others covered with golden and silver armor. The sky was a combination of green and purple. The snow fell on the streets of this city, making these things warm, and you could also see many children playing in the snow. What was this place exactly? What things were those beings? Well, this was the supernatural world, more specifically the underworld, home of the demons. But if it is the home of the demons, why could angels, fallen, yokais, and Asgardians be seen walking the streets of that city of demons? Well, that is because more than 7 years ago an alliance was made between these beings and many more, making them live in peace and harmony. Even though they had to face extremely powerful enemies who only wanted the destruction of the alliance and both worlds, supernatural and human, they now lived in peace, and all thanks to a special person who was always willing to go out and defend them no matter what. This person was none other than Issei Hyoudou, a young reincarnated demon who began his adventure in the supernatural world at the age of 18, just as he was starting his second stage in high school. Before this happened, he was a fairly popular boy. He was intelligent and gentlemanly, and he had the idea of becoming a great doctor. But after an event that changed his life thanks to a fallen angel named Reiner, he became the pawn of the demoness Rias, Gremry, heiress of the Gremry house, in addition to knowing that he was the possessor of a quite powerful sacred gear called Booster Gear, which contained within it the great red celestial dragon Drake. There was also the fact that he was a prodigy in magic, something that fascinated several nobles and high and supreme class demons when they saw the great talent he had in the manipulation of magic and making the members of the Gremry entourage and clan proud, as well as the great Mao Lucifer Zurch's Gremry. For years he was strengthening himself both physically and mentally and magically, in addition to his handling of his sacred gear, in order to protect his friends, family, and innocent beings. In addition to that, he also met quite interesting people like the descendant of the original Lucifer, Valeria Lucifer, who also turned out to be his rival for having the great celestial white dragon Albion inside her. Issei was enchanted when he met her. It was like seeing the greatest beauty in the universe in front of him. But unfortunately she was a beauty that was not for him. Despite the fact that he tried many times to get her attention, show his feelings, and give her really beautiful things, she seemed not to care about his existence. She was cold and direct with him. She always rejected him by dedicating harsh and cutting words to him, until one day she decided to humiliate him in public, saying that she would never be with someone as ridiculous as him, and finally ended up kissing a noble in front of everyone, completely destroying Issei. But in the end that never stopped Issei from getting stronger, and even though that pain was still present in his heart, his companions and friends supported him to move forward and never let himself be defeated by the damage he received, and much less cry for someone who did not deserve those tears of a true hero and guardian. Issei was very grateful for the support of them whom he could call true friends, but especially from his greatest friend whom he met in his childhood, Irena Shidu. She always stayed by his side, even though she left for several years and then returned. Their friendship had not been affected by anything or at all. What's more, it had become stronger than it was before. Separating them was something extremely impossible to do. Even though many nobles tried to get closer to Issei, he would never leave aside his childhood friend Irena Shidu, who did the same. For a long time, the two trained their physical and magical abilities, growing to gigantic levels, being at the levels of a seraph and a Mao. Thus using that power to protect their loved ones. Thus getting to fight against very strong beings such as the Kadre Kokabil, the Nordic god of the Masters Loki, the hero faction, the strongest human of all Chow Chow, the fearsome Chaos Brigade, the most powerful super demon of all Rise of Him, even the fearsome beast of the Apocalypse Triexa and his legion of evil dragons. The Alliance had to go through all those fights in order to finally achieve the peace and harmony they so longed for, but in the end they ended up thanking Issei for everything, since he was always the one who took the worst parts of the battles, being the one who fought with the final bosses of each encounter they had. Returning from the dead after being poisoned by Samuel's blood and going bare-knuckle with Triexa himself to signal him again in the apocalyptic dimension. After those events, each one decided to make their own life. Rias Gremry and Razor Phoenix fell in love, as did Serkiutii and Esay with Michael, while Lucifer, well, in the end she didn't do well with the nobles she had chosen to share her life with, since he only hit her, insulted her and denigrated her. Plus he had been unfaithful to her with someone else. That had undoubtedly destroyed her for a lot, but what ended up breaking her was knowing that she had decided to push away a true love which was now in the hands of someone else who was not going to make the same mistake as her. The Watcher narrates, "I was always watching the universes in search of a hero, but it was only a matter of time to see the whole picture, and I saw that it was not just one hero but several heroes, but the story about the Serkiutii Hyoudou Issei was what caught my attention the most. But I also saw that the happiness that he had finally achieved after so much fighting and suffering was going to be taken away from him and possibly lead him to a path full of darkness and pain." Chapter 2. It was a pretty quiet and cold night in the snowy streets of Kwa, where you could see several warm people walking, having a good time with friends and family, or in the middle of a date. But this time we are going to focus on a car which was passing quickly through the streets of Kwa in an unknown direction. But in this car you could see no one else but the great hero of the factions, pawn of Rias Gremry, the last and strongest Serkiutii of all, as well as being a good doctor, Issei Hyoudou. This young man, already turned into a cold and calculating man by his vast and painful experiences in the supernatural world, was driving at high speed to a single place which was the home of his beloved Irena Shidu. Just that night he had planned to have a good time with her, a simple date like the ones humans usually have. From taking her to dinner, going to see a movie, walking through the park and going to the frozen lake that they liked to see so much since they were children. But just that same night Searches, Michael, Azazel and Odin have Ian gone to visit him at his home to tell them about the big party they were going to have regarding the celebration of the melting of the Triexa. At first he was going to refuse, but before that they told him that it was mandatory for the hero of the factions to show up. Then he was going to make up an excuse or tell them the truth that he had plans to be with Irena and thus be able to tell her something very important, but again they got ahead of him, saying that they had already informed the reincarnated angel of the situation, as she was the current partner of the great hero Hyoudou Issei. With that said and clarified, seeing that he had no other choice, he unleashed all his fury against the leaders for ruining the perfect opportunity to be with his beloved Irena Shidu. Throughout the day/afternoon/night, heartbreaking screams were heard, as well as screams of pleading, apologies and regret throughout the block, and they even swore they heard them in the early hours of the next day. Issei, "Okay, let's see if I have everything. Flowers ready, chocolates ready, ring ready," he said as he took out the last thing. He took a small case, opening it, revealing a beautiful golden ring with a diamond in the middle. "I had everything planned. I finally had the perfect opportunity to ask her to be my wife, and those idiots had to ruin it. How bad that Grafia, Gabriel, Penemu and Gondel-san had to come to prevent me from continuing to hit them. But well, I'll get my revenge tonight at the party." He arriving said at the hotel where Irena was staying. Issei proceeded to get out of his car and stand in front of the hotel entrance waiting for his beloved to come out, and both of them headed to the Kwa Academy. More specifically to the abandoned building of the occult club, where the others were waiting for them so they could retreat to the underworld to Lucifer's castle where the party would take place. Issei waited around 5 minutes until he saw her come out, his beautiful and beloved Irena. "Irena, hello, good evening, handsome," she said, dressed casually to go out on a date, instead of to an important event. "Issei, this? It's the only thing I found in the dryer. but instead he said, opening the door of his car for her. Irena. It was the only thing Issei had ready. Besides, I'm only going for dessert. You promised me a strawberry milk cake, she said, entering the co-pilot's seat. Issei. I guess we could do something a little better than that, he said flirtatiously as he closed the passenger door. Thus Issei proceeded to enter the pilot's seat so that they could both head to the occult club, but without realizing that they had been observed by a white armor with blue touches that was positioned on top of a building while clenching his fists in a sign of anger for what he had just witnessed. This person was the current Hakuryuka Valeria Lucifer, heir of the original Lucifer and bearer of the white celestial dragon Albion. Valeria, that damn thing, how dare she even come near my dragon? She said, very annoyed while clenching her fists, making her armor creak. Albion. I do not agree with you, Valeria. You lost the right to even call him your partner when you decided to harm him in such a humiliating and cruel way in front of all the young nobles of the underworld, proving that you are truly a descendant of the original Lucifer, the dragon said, quite annoyed by what his partner had just said. Valeria, shut up, Albion. In fact, you should support me as you always have. Help me get her forgiveness and win back her love. Albino. I have always supported you because you deserved my help, partner. But after what you did, I decided to let you do what you wanted. After all, karma would charge you sooner or later. Besides, you decided not to listen to me back then, he said, ending the discussion he had with his carrier. Valeria, go away. I don't need you, to useless dragon. I myself will recover what belongs to me. I myself will take care of recovering my beloved Issei, she said, flying in the direction where Issei went. 10 minutes later, Issei was driving very calmly through a small forest in order to get to the Qua Academy, which he had decided to move 3 years ago in order to expand further, also becoming a high school and university. Irena, come on, I know you have something prepared. You would never think of improvising, just tell me. Issei, okay, I'll tell you. Good night, friends, leaders and fellow alliance members. Irena, nah, it's so boring, I'm already asleep. Issei, I just said good night. Irena, you should just run to power, cheering, shouting, clapping hands like on a game show. Issei, program of what? Irena, please, you're going to be promoted to a Mao position alongside young Serorg, Razor and Sai Valeria. Issei, well, being told that point surprised me a lot. Irena, what about Valeria? Issei, no, I wanted to be promoted to a Mao position, but to tell the truth, the only important thing to me is you, he said while caressing Irena's cheek, who blushed and gave a red smile. But in that, something had hit the car where the two were going with great force, causing it to fly and fall down a ravine, giving strong bounces until Issei flew out by the force of the blows and fell to the ground with force, remaining unconscious for a few minutes. But at the moment of waking up, he would see something that would truly cause him great pain and hatred, since in front of him was his destroyed car, while on top of it was a Valeria with her face uncovered, revealing a mocking and grim smile, while holding a very injured Irena by the neck, who was spitting blood in addition to having her heart pierced by the hand of the current Hakuryuku. Valeria, oh, Issei, my love, she said as she turned to look at the brown-haired boy with a big smile. Look, she is cursed and will not bother us anymore, she said, throwing the lifeless body of the beautiful angel. Issei, no, Irena, please don't leave me, Irena. The Watcher narrates. After that event, Issei Hyoudou fought against Valeria Lucifer, who for a very short period, 5 minutes, had been subdued without any problem by Issei Hyoudou, who, blinded by anger and revenge, was willing to end the life of his former love. If it were not for the leaders who had arrived in the area with their companions and the Gremory clan, Citri, Phoenix and the dragon goddess Ophis to calm Issei's anger, which was the most difficult thing they could experience. Swearing that it was even worse than the first 8 Mimitos they had to endure fighting against the Triaxa waiting for Issei's arrival. After what happened, Valeria was locked away in the depths of Tartarus, while Irena was given a decent burial attended by the alliance leaders, her companions, her family, and Issei, who had lost the only thing he had left of his family and heart. Despite having his friends and companions, Irena was the only thing he had left of his family. His parents had been killed by fallen angels. His best friend and companion Drake had decided to sacrifice his soul in order to give Issei enough power to defeat the Triaxa. Devastated and confused, Issei decided to explore the world and the mystic arts in search of answers, eventually meeting the Ancient One who led him down the path of the mystic arts, teaching him everything she knew. But when the threat came and they lost the Ancient One, Issei Hyoudou remained, thus going from the great and powerful Issei Hyoudou of all to the great Sorcerer Supreme. But despite what happened, Issei Hyoudou could not forget the past. Chapter 3. It's been 2 years since what happened with Irena Shidu and Valeria Lucifer. Right at this moment Issei could be seen sitting drinking whiskey looking out the window of his temple in New York. Since what had happened he had cut ties with the supernatural world, and as he did not hear anything from his friends, companions, or the leaders. It destroyed him quite a bit that day, the day he had lost everything, and it was thanks to some ridiculous jealousy of someone who had decided to humiliate him and destroy him, that he decided to take away the only thing he had left. He continued in his own world until his new friend or companion Wong appeared. Wong, so we've already changed to the cheap brand? He asked sarcastically, looking at Issei's depressed state. Sigh, how long has it been? He asked, understanding his friend's pain. Issei, 2 years tonight. What are you doing here? Wong, I'm going to the sorcerer's bathroom. What are you doing here? He said, seeing how Issei had the eye of Agamotto in his hand. Okay, I'll put the kettle on. I recommend that you accompany me before you do something reckless, he said, leaving Issei alone. Issei, after seeing that Wong had left, turned his gaze to the eye of Agamotto again, and giving a deep, strong and determined sigh, he hung the eye of Agamotto around his neck and then opened it and activated it, starting to back up at the exact point at the moment when he had gone to pick up Irena, seeing her leave the hotel where she was staying with that beauty that he could never forget, and that sweet and tender smile that was the purest and most dazzling he had seen in his entire life. Irena, hello, good night, handsome, she said, watching as Issei touched his chest and seemed somewhat surprised. Is something wrong? Issei, it's nothing, I think I suffered a mild cardiac arrest. Irena, heart attack, doctor? Well, get ready, Hyoudou. You promised me a 3-milk cake with strawberries. Issei, just ask me, Irena, and I will give you the world, he said, blushing at Irena, who gave a big and tender smile. 10 minutes later, Issei and Irena could be seen almost reaching the occult club. During all that time and trip, Issei spent his time looking around for Valeria Lucifer in order to prevent her from committing the madness of wanting to kill his beloved Irena. This, of course, without the angel realizing what he was doing, since he did not want to worry her. Irena, come on, Issei, you should have prepared something. You wouldn't improvise it, only me. Issei, of course not, I'm going to improvise it seriously. I'm going to run it at random like in a game show, win, shout, shake hands, he said in a funny way. Irena, are you serious, Issei? Okay, no, you already said it, you have to do it. Issei, only if you are by my side, he said, looking at Irena's side more than anything to make sure that Valeria would not attack, since it was from that side that she appeared and hit the car, sending them flying. Irena, ha ha ha, you seem sweeter and more tender than usual. I owe someone a basket of cupcakes for this. Issei, maybe, he said, lowering his guard, thinking that Irena's murder would not happen. Maybe you make me happy, he said with a sweet and sincere smile. Irena, ha ha ha. Well, I think tonight is going to be unforgettable. But then a blue flash appeared behind them, hitting the car hard, sending them flying towards the ravine, passing Irena Shida's death again. Issei got up from the ground, taking the lifeless body of the young reincarnated angel, while Valeria Lucifer laughed like a madwoman, as well as saying things like, Irena didn't deserve to have him, that Irena would never please him or make him happy, that he even deserved to die at her hands. Irena, no, 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 not again. No, Irena, she said, bursting into tears. But then he decided to lay her down on the ground to proceed to open the eye of Agamotto, leaving Valeria bewildered by seeing that strange object that emanated great power. Issei proceeded to go back in time to the same point where he picked up Irena, seeing her leave again from that luxurious hotel where she was staying with that smile that he liked to see so much in her. Irena, hello, good evening, handsome. Issei, your carriage awaits, he said, opening the car door for her, and then closing it when he saw that she had entered to proceed to drive, only with the difference of taking a different path. Irena, I think you went too far. Isn't the academy over there? She said/asked, seeing that they passed the street that led to the academy. Issei, There was a change of plans. Rias said she would meet us at the station to travel by train to the underworld, he said, lying so as not to worry her. Calm down, we will be fine, he said, trying to calm her down, which worked since she gave a smile. But at that moment Valeria rammed the car with great force, causing the humans to see her, and killing Irena Hyoudou again. Issei proceeded to turn back time again. Irena, they are going to celebrate the melting of the Triaxa and they are going to promote you to a Mao. This whole party is for you. Issei, we have to stay. We'll order pizza and strawberry 3 milk cake, he said, nervously trying to convince her not to go. Irena, oh no, I won't get these clothes dirty with grease. Do you understand? We'll go dancing. I promise you'll have fun. 2 hours later, Issei and Irena could be seen in the middle of a large hall dancing while they were accompanied by several couples. But then Valeria Lucifer, who was wearing a beautiful silver dress, appeared behind Hyoudou and stabbed her in the back, piercing her heart, killing her. Issei restarted time again, this time taking her somewhere else, more specifically a pizzeria. Irena, pizza, you are a genius, she said, eating a slice of pizza. Issei gave a tender smile at the thought that he finally got it, but that thought was gone when he saw Valeria enter with a dagger in hand which she used to slit Irena's throat, killing her and forcing Issei to restart time over and over again in order to prevent her from dying, but the result was the same. He had even asked his mistress Rias and his entourage companions to go for her, and he would catch up with them later. But in the end he saw on the news how the occult club hall had exploded after the impact of a blue flash, killing Irena Hyoudou, forcing him to go back in time again. Irena, Issei, is something wrong? She asked, seeing how upset the brown-haired boy was. Issei, why does this keep happening? Don't we have the right to be happy? Irena, I think I should drive, she said, taking the car keys. 10 minutes later, Irena was driving through the forest near Qua Academy, where she first died before Issei delved into the mystic arts. Irena, Issei, do you need to talk? I asked, getting the brown-haired boy's attention. Put on some music? Issei, I only want you, you are the only thing that matters to me, he said sadly while closing his eyes. In that he felt how the car was hit by Valeria Lucifer, the same thing happening as the first time, seeing the lifeless body of Irena while Lucifer gave great laughter of madness, and he saw the lifeless body of his beloved reincarnated angel, and then gave a loud heartbreaking scream that even made Valeria laugh, who now questioned herself about what she did, but before she could do or at least say something, a kind of portal opened, revealing a woman in yellow clothes without hair floating in the direction of Issei. This was Ancestral. Ancestral, good evening, young Issei, am I interrupting something? He asked, surprising Valeria a little since it seemed that that woman knew her dragon. Issei, why are you here? Ancestral, to help you. This is where it all begins for you. After the death of the reincarnated angel Irena Hyoudou, you will begin to search for answers in the mystical arts, in me. Issei, help me bring her back. Ancestral, I'm sorry but I can't, no one can. His death is an absolute point in time. Issei, absolute? Ancestral, immutable, immovable. If the young Valeria Lucifer had not killed her, you would never have defeated Dormammu, thus becoming the supreme sorcerer and guardian of the Eye of Agamotto, and if you eliminate her death, your journey will not even begin. Issei, I'm creating a paradox. Ancestral, you risk the entire universe, no one can reverse an absolute point. Issei, but nothing is impossible, you taught me that, I just need more power. Ancestral, the best sorcerers could not remove an absolute point. Issei, you don't know that, there are forbidden books, destroyed libraries. Ancestor, stop tormenting yourself like this. Issei, Irena is gone, there is nothing for you here anymore. Issei, no, he said in a serious and cold manner. Ancestral, Issei, this path you are choosing will lead you to darkness and the end of this reality. I beg you not to do it, he said, watching as Issei activated the Eye of Agamotto. Oh, you are going to force me to stop you. Issei, you'll have to find me before, he said, ready to travel in time. But in that Ancestral fired a great blast of magic straight at Issei's chest, more specifically at the Eye of Agamotto. Valeria, who was on the sidelines of what was happening, not understanding what they were saying, came out of her thoughts when she saw how Issei was attacked by Ancestral, so she flew against the woman. But before even touching her, a great golden glow appeared in the place, and then it was seen how only the lifeless body of Irena was found, while ancestral Issei and even Valeria had disappeared from the place without a trace. Chapter 4. Issei was opening his eyes, noticing that he was in a kind of jungle. He checked the part of his chest where the energy ray that ancestral shot at him was hit, seeing that the eye of Agamotto was intact as well as a burn on his shirt but without any damage. He proceeded to get up from the ground, seeing a man in strange clothes staring at him, making Issei a little nervous, only to then speak and know the location of the place he is looking for. Issei, excuse me, hello, I'm looking for the lost library of Cagliostro, he said, watching as the man stood there, still making him understand that he had not understood what he meant. Library, hello, with books, reading, knowledge, he said, trying to make him understand but only making him turn around and start walking. Issei just sighed and began to follow him deeper into the jungle, noticing several strange things like statues, tombstones, or tablets being covered by the vines that the trees were releasing. He began to question what time he was in and where he was going until he saw a large temple that he instantly recognized. Issei, Cagliostro's library, he said, seeing the great temple. Wow, there's no door, he said, opening a portal reaching the entrance of the temple. Issei proceeded to walk until a strange symbol appeared in front of him. He proceeded to take some small stones that were there to throw them at the seal, seeing that they disintegrated, noticing that it was a protective seal. Issei, using a spell, proceeded to remove the seal, giving him the step to enter. If it had not been that there were more seals, causing the ground to disappear, dropping Issei against the hard ground. Issei, okay, that was unexpected, he said as he stood up in pain. Ha ha ha. You must be the sorcerer with the strangest clothes I've ever seen, said the man he found in the jungle. Issei, well, it's Armani, he said, composing himself from the blow. I'm looking for the sorcerer Cagliostro. According to legend, he knew how to break an absolute point. Where can I find him? Maybe here, maybe there, maybe nowhere, he said while giving a smile. Issei, great, and enigmatic, please tell me you are not Cagliostro. My name is Obeng, librarian of the books of Cagliostro, he said as he turned around. Follow me, sorcerer Armani. Issei, no, I'm Hyoudou. Obeng, well, that's a little better, he said as they arrived inside the library. Issei, the lost books of Cagliostro, he said, seeing the large amount of books. Obeng, how long are you going to be here? Issei, as much as it takes, he said, and then stretched out his hands, attracting all the books in the place, stacking them around him. There is telekinesis, teleportation, there is manipulation of space and time. Bingo, he said, sitting on the floor, opening the book and starting to read. Okay, let's see. To break an absolute point, the energy required to achieve it is a lot and almost impossible to get. Yeah, right. The energy required for this is obtained through the absorption of other beings. Absorption? 30 minutes later, Issei was in front of a red magic circle with strange inscriptions that shone as the brown-haired boy prepared to summon the being that would come out of there. Issei proceeded to begin the summoning spell, letting out of the circle a large number of giant green tentacles. Issei, hello, my name is Dr. Issei Hyoudou, and I brought you here because I need to borrow your powers. Could you give me one or two of your tentacles? He asked, and then felt how he was held by the foot. Please. But then he had been lifted and moved roughly by the strange being, which gave a great roar while Issei tried to free himself, only to fall unconscious and then wake up in a certain way with Obeng at his side treating his wounds. Issei, what happened? Obeng, mystical beings don't make deals, their powers are not made for humans. Issei, the books in the library are not enough. Those beings have what I need. Obeng, she's worth all this, he said, drawing Issei's attention. A man doesn't suffer like this for his own glory. Issei, every moment of him. Obeng, there's a fine line between devotion and madness. Love can corrupt more than your heart, it can break your mind, he said as he left the room. Issei, and in what book did you read that? Obeng, not a sorcerer Armani, life taught me that, he said, leaving Issei thinking about what he said. 3 months later, Issei had already recovered from what had happened and is now more than ready to continue what he had started. Issei, Obeng is right, if they don't want to give their powers, I'll take it. Okay, let's start with something small, he said, summoning a small gnome angrily to proceed to absorb its energy and become one with him. Okay, what's next? He asked himself, summoning a cockroach with a cape. Nice cape. although insects are not my thing, he said, removing the cape and then returning it to the circle. Issei proceeded to summon a giant crow, absorbing it, thus continuing with the invocations and absorptions of powers and abilities that these mystical beings had while he looked into the darkness, and was seen by the Watcher, who had a look full of sadness, worry and disappointment. Watcher, I'm taking the wrong path, I could warn him, intervene, but the fate of his universe would not affect the good of others at all, and also he wouldn't listen to me. Issei, hello? Who's there? He said, thinking he had heard someone. But he decided not to give it much thought and continued with the absorption of the mystical beings. It is not known how many days, weeks, months, years, or the number of beings he absorbed so that he could obtain enough power to break the absolute point that tormented him so much until he finally reached his last invocation. Issei, okay, it's time to see an old friend, he said, summoning the unknown creature he summoned the first time. Hello again, and see you soon. After saying that, Issei proceeded to close the portal by cutting some of that creature's tentacles, which headed towards Issei to hold him tightly, but in the end these tentacles began to be absorbed by Issei's body, thus ending up obtaining the power required to break the absolute point that made him what he is now. Issei, upon finishing what he had planned, went to look for Obeng, finding him lying on a bed, but the difference was that he looked older and more tired. Issei, Obeng, what happened to you? Obeng, the time sorcerer Armani, he said, and then saw how Issei was going to use the time gem on him. Put that thing away. You used magic to freeze your time for several centuries. I decided to live. Issei, but I can reverse it, make him live longer and… Obeng, hush, cough, cough, even in our world death is just a continuation of life. Issei, but I refuse to accept it. Obeng, I know, but cough, maybe the other Hyoudou will accept it. Issei, the other one? Obeng, don't you see it? You're only half a man, living half a life. Vigilante, Obeng was right, he was not the only Issei Hyoudou in history, but more in the universe. In another timeline, Issei could be seen sitting in front of the window of the New York temple looking at the Eye of Agamotto, while next to him was his friend and partner Wong. Wong, fine, I'll put the kettle on, I suggest you come with me before you do something reckless, he said, leaving the place to do what he said. Issei just thought about what Wong said and then turned to look at the Eye of Agamotto. It still hurt a lot to remember Irena, in addition to always carrying with him the engagement ring he bought for her, only to sigh and look at the window with determination. Issei, I've already lived a lot in the past for one afternoon, he said, leaving the Eye of Agamotto aside and going to the first floor of the temple. Issei, already having his levitation cloak on, proceeded to leave the temple to get some air, but he saw something that confused him greatly, since he could see how the city was beginning to deteriorate as well as the people. Issei, but what was in that whiskey? He asked, seeing what was happening. But then a strange portal opened behind him, making him alert because a threat was coming from there, but what he saw was the ancestral, making him more confused. Ancestor, hello Issei. Issei, hey wait, aren't you? Ancestor dead? Forks. Issei, so this is ancestral, an illusion sent by the fragmentation of time? Forks. Issei, aha, I was going to say it was going to be the end of the world. Ancestral, I'm afraid that may be the case and we don't have much time. Issei, and who is doing all this? Ancestor, indeed it is you, Issei. Issei, how? Ancestor, when Issei Hyoudou you used the Eye of Agamotto to fade into the past, I couldn't follow it, so I used the power of the dark dimension to split the timeline. Split you, I explain as understandably as possible. Issei, splitting two timelines into a single universe. I feel like that wasn't the smartest choice possible. Ancestral, extremely dangerous indeed, and now I believe that the only sorcerer with enough strength to stop Dr. Hyoudou is your Dr. Hyoudou, he said before disappearing, leaving Issei bewildered by what Ancestral had said, but seeing the engagement ring hanging on his chest, he knew what he had to do. What he didn't know was if he had the strength necessary to be able to achieve it. Chapter 5. After his talk with Ancestral, Issei was in the main room of his sanctuary creating some magical symbols with Wong, who seemed to be fading little by little but still remaining calm, as was Issei, although at the weekend he was worried since he did not know if he would have enough strength to face him. although he had to do it in order to save the universe, even if it cost him the possibility of seeing his beloved childhood friend and guardian angel Irena Hyoudou again. Wong, see, let me see if I understand, he said while continuing to create the strange symbols. The fabric of reality is fragmenting, and only you can stop it because you are causing it. Issei, we've seen worse and stranger things, he replied as if what was happening was the most normal thing. Wong, yes, but do you really want to stop him? He said, drawing Issei's attention. Weren't you in love with that Irena? Issei, I think I have an obligation to stop him, he said, trying not to look sad at what Wong said. Even if it's to save you, he said gracefully, making Wong snort in annoyance at his bad jokes. Wong, the protection spell, strong of the Vis anti-sorcerers. Issei, knowing me, I'll need it. Wong, how are you going to find him? Or rather, how are you going to find yourself? I asked before feeling the atmosphere change to a hostile and cold one. Issei, I think I've found myself, he said before seeing how a crimson magic circle was formed below him. Wong, that's not good. Issei, nope, it's not, he said before being absorbed by the circle. Wong, good luck. Issei seemed to be falling down a slide as he screamed in surprise until he hit the hard floor. He started to get up with some pain only to see that he was now in a rather dark place, but managing to identify some shelves, candles and chandeliers. Issei began to look at the floor, seeing that it seemed that he was trapped in the same crimson circle that had taken him to that strange place for him. Issei, where am I? He asked himself as he looked around the dark place. No. That sound, or rather that voice, took Issei out of his visual search, seeing a strange mass that seemed to be writing until it began to take human form, which slowly approached the light, revealing that it was the other Issei, who looked somewhat different from him. Note, from here during the fight he will call the original Issei, Dark Issei. Drak Issei, the question is, when will you meet? He said while being face to face with his counterpart. There is nothing to fear, old friend, since we are one and the same. Issei, what happened to you? Dark Issei, I needed you alone. I don't need Wong or Ancestral. They wouldn't understand, they didn't know her. But we did, we love her, he said with great sadness. Issei, you can't revive her, the outside world is fracturing. Issei, don't you dare lie to me, I am you. He exclaimed with great anger, and then lost control of his new power, being surrounded by a large orange aura quickly showing the silhouettes of the different and hundreds of beings that he absorbed during the centuries that he was in the lost library of Cagliostro, greatly impacting his counterpart for what he had done until Drak Issei managed to recover from that attack of fury and control his power again. Drak Issei, how many times have we sat in the Sanctum Sanctorum with the time gem in the palm of our hand, knowing that we could return if we had the courage, he said, quite annoyed. Well, I had the courage. I spent centuries sacrificing everything for Irena. Issei, and now you can save her? Dark Issei, no Issei, he said, taking him by the arm, but together yes, he said, and then disappeared from Cagliostro's library and reappeared in the place and time where Irena died with her counterpart. Our powers are diluted by being divided, but as soon as we left again we would manage to save her. Issei, we can't. Dark Issei, I know you think it's not possible, but you'll see. Issei, the Ancient One warned us, if we save Irena, we will destroy the universe. Dark Issei, ugh, I already told you that she doesn't understand you, and I love Irena. Issei, this isn't love, look at you. This is arrogance, our need to fix everything. It pushed us to learn the mystic arts to begin with. Dark Issei, and that brought us here. Issei, madness. Dark Issei, I'll be myself again. Issei, no, you lost your sanity a long time ago. However, the world can still live, he said, only to see how his counterpart tried to absorb him, but being protected by the protection spell, you can't save her, she's dead. Both Isseis stared at each other. Dark was preparing a fairly powerful magic attack while Issei was preparing a shield. Dark Issei threw the magic sphere in the direction of Issei, who proceeded to protect himself with his magic shield, moving back a few meters. But then he saw how Dark Issei began to float several meters above the ground, preparing other magic attacks by throwing them at Issei, who blocked them again with his magic shields. Issei, you have to let her go. Dark Issei, I've already come too far to turn back. After saying that, he proceeded to go against his counterpart, destroying his magic shield with his hand that transformed into dark green tentacles to proceed to crash it against a wall. But Issei used the same protection spell to push Issei back and then create some magic discs to throw them against Dark Issei, who blocked them with ease, although that was as a distraction to proceed to tie him with several magic chains to hold him back. But Dark Issei broke them as if nothing had happened, causing Issei to crash against a wall. Then Dark Issei proceeded to hit the ground hard to summon what seemed to be ground hippos that headed against the brown-haired boy, who proceeded to defend himself with magic discs, and then tied Dark Issei again with magic chains. But he used his dark levitation cape to attack his counterpart, disconcerting him, and he also made the red levitation cape free him, causing him to fall to the ground. But before he could, when he touches the ground, I create a portal, causing him to land on his feet without receiving any damage. Issei proceeded to attack with a strong blast of magic, but Dark Issei countered it with his bare hand as if it were nothing, turning it into magical chains that held Issei tightly, and then proceeded to remove the protection spell, causing him to scream in pain. Was about to completely remove the spell until the red cloak of levitation clung to her arms, giving Issei the opportunity to free herself, but at the cost of being burned by Dark Issei. Issei proceeded to create a large and powerful magical attack to throw against Dark Issei, hitting the black-haired man, creating a large explosion, creating a large curtain of dust that dissipated thanks to a sphere of white light, drawing Issei's attention, without realizing that his shadow had changed shape. Issei continued seeing the strange white sphere until he was pulled by his own shadow entering the darkness, making Issei put on guard until a great golden glow illuminated the place, blinding Issei a little, and then he regained his sight, seeing what he was now in. In his apartment, and in front of him his beloved Irena. Irena, haha, I'm quite happy to see you again, Issei. Issei, Irena? But how? Irena, haha, Issei, you promised me a 3 leches cake with strawberries. Issei, sigh, I know. Irena, Issei loved you, she said while he gave a smile, but then memories of what was happening in the outside world came to her. He loved you. Issei, I'm sorry, but you're not real. After saying that, the whole place began to fall apart, while Irena transformed into Dark Issei, who gave him a strong blow, returning him to reality, causing the two of them to plummet to the ground while hitting each other. The bad thing for Issei was that every blow he made, Dark gave him the protection spell and it disappeared until the two fell to the ground with Dark Issei on top of his counterpart, who had some scratches and bruises, and the spell was about to disappear. Issei, you can't do this. Dark Issei, but we must do it, he said, removing the last symbol of the protection spell. So Dark Issei proceeded to absorb his counterpart, being complete again. Once he had the power he needed, he proceeded to start the spell to break the absolute point. But the more he continued using the spell, his body underwent a transformation, in addition to the eye of Agamotto beginning to change color, turning red like blood, in addition to Issei transforming into some kind of demon, and the whole place transformed into a post-apocalyptic scene. Issei saw Irena's body and proceeded to revive her and attract her to him. Issei, Irena, he said, seeing how she was starting to wake up. Irena. Irena, what? She asked, already awake. Issei, it's me, Irena. Irena, what? But what happened? Issei, I brought you back, I saved you. Irena, no, this is not real, she said, seeing how everything around her was destroyed. This is a nightmare, she screamed, moving away from Issei, and seeing how she began to disappear, alarming Issei. Issei, no, I can fix it. Irena, get away from me, don't touch me. Issei, Irena, and oh, he shouted, returning to normal. Irena, Issei? Issei, I didn't want this to happen, no, and oh, he said, watching as everything around him began to disappear. Irena, Issei, what's going on? At that, Issei proceeded to try to stop the universe from disappearing using all his power. But it was impossible for him to do so. He only managed to delay the inevitable until he saw the Watcher appear in front of him, and Irena. Issei, you can make it stop, please fix it. Watchman, just like you fixed Irena. Irena, what? Issei, I didn't want to. Watchman, you have been warned. Issei, I know, but the world should not pay for my arrogance. I read about you. I felt your presence. You are a god. Watchman, I am not a god and neither are you. Issei, then punish me, not the world, not me, Irena. Vigilante, believe me, if I could fix all this and punish you instead, I would, but I can't intervene. You better than anyone should know that playing with time only brings more chaos, he said, beginning to disappear, leaving Issei alone. Issei, no, I didn't want any of this to happen, he shouted, and then turned to see Irena, who had a look full of fear and worry, but above all disappointment. In the end, Issei could not resist any longer, and ended up giving in to the end of the universe, which disappeared, leaving a kind of infinite black. But in the middle of all that dark space you could see a crystal sphere floating, where inside was Issei holding his beloved Irena in his arms, who looked quite tired and about to disappear. Issei, Irena, I didn't want this to happen. I'm sorry, he said, trying to hold back his tears as he saw the woman he loves die in his arms, only this time it was his fault. Irena, Issei, what did you do? It was the last thing he said before disappearing forever. Issei, no, Issei began to break down in tears as he remained alone in that infinite black space for all eternity. Issei, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Issei's cries could be heard throughout that infinite dark space that was once a great universe. The Watcher narrates, one life, one choice can destroy the entire universe. Chapter 6. He doesn't know how much time has passed since he destroyed the universe. Days, weeks, months, years, decades, or maybe centuries. He doesn't know. After all, there was no way to know how much time has passed since he tried to save his beloved Irena but consequently destroyed the universe, in addition to seeing her die again in his arms forever. Only now it was his fault, and all for not accepting that he had lost her. Now Issei is trying to use the Eye of Agamotto in order to turn back time and prevent all this from happening, but it was impossible to go back. Even time had disappeared. It was just his 150th attempt, 385, 999 and nothing. Issei, why? Why can't I do anything right? He said while on his knees as he clenched his fists, which were surrounded by a crimson fire. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want the whole universe to be reduced to nothing. For her, he said, as memories of all the moments he spent with his beloved Irena came to him, for her to disappear from my side forever. After saying that, he proceeded to try once more, thus opening the Eye of Agamotto, and then using all his power to be able to go back in time. But the power was too much that it even began to tear the space between universes and dimensions, creating portals around it. Something that he did not realize after trying to harden the pain he was feeling at that moment, in addition to expelling a lot of energy, causing an orange gap with red touches to be created under his feet, absorbing him completely, creating a blood-red flash that illuminated that entire space in infinite black and then disappeared, revealing that there was nothing in the crystal prison that Issei created in that endless black space. Elsewhere, or rather in another universe, it was a pretty quiet and calm night in what seemed to be a palace floating in the sky. Wait a minute, floating in the sky? Well, that's a little weird to see, but oh well, let's see what's going on. In the long hallways of this great castle you could hear what seemed to be a conversation of a large group of women. In one of the doors that led to this great hallway you could see half lit. Inside of it you could see several women with different dresses, but all being decorated with the same colors, white with blue details, except for one who was wearing the type or set of clothes that teenagers today wear, and others who were wearing some kind of golden female armor. All of them were talking about a matter of great importance to them, or at least the majority, since there was one or another that seemed not to be interested in what the others were talking about. And what was the matter they were discussing? Well, it turns out that the gods of that world wanted to exterminate the entire human race, but it seemed that the oldest of them all had opposed that decision of those supposed gods by challenging them to a tournament between them and man, better known by the Norse gods as Ragnarok. 11. Big Sister Brynhilda, tell me, when will the day be when you will stop meddling in the affairs of the gods? Said the Valkyrie with yellow hair tied in 2 tickets and also looking like a girl. 1. And could you tell me when you are going to stop being a girl who has fun playing tea with her stuffed animals that she bought with my money? She said, silencing the little girl who squatted in a corner making circles on the floor with a depressive aura surrounding her. 2. Don't you think you were a little cruel to her? Sister. 1. No, not even a little bit, he said seriously. 7. But anyway, back to the main topic. 4. I agree with our older sister Brunhilde. We must support her and the humans as the Valkyries that we are. 3. But the gods themselves are their opponents. To tell the truth, I doubt they can even confront them. 2. That's what we're here for, sister, to support the man in this difficult battle. 13. Older sisters, to tell the truth, I don't think this is a good idea, said the one who seemed to be the youngest of all, drawing the attention of the others. Brunhilde, what do you mean, Gal? She asked, looking seriously at the little Valkyrie. Gal, what I mean is, a battle of God against man. That is an impossible victory to win, besides the fact that the gods had already made the decision to destroy humanity until you entered the council and challenged them to Ragnarok. Brunhilde, Gal, my dear, the decision had not been completed when I came in, and those evil-born gods deserve to be humiliated just as humans deserve a chance to defend themselves against them. Gal, but sister. Brunhilde, Gal, if you don't agree with this, I'm going to ask you to leave here right now, she said coldly, causing the little Valkyrie to freeze. But following her older sister's orders, she proceeded to leave the room and then run through the halls of the Valkyrie's castle while the others heard her sobs, making them feel bad, especially Brunhilde for that, since despite being true, it didn't take away the fact that she felt bad for speaking to her like that. 4. Don't you think you were a little harsh on her older sister? Brunhilde, yes, I know, but I have to be so that she understands why I do this. 2. You mean, why do we do this? She said with a sweet smile, supported by the others, thus continuing the discussion on the subject. With Gal, she was in the garden that had the floating island watching the clouds around her as well as the night being decorated by the stars and the beautiful full moon. She was thinking about what her older sister had said and she knew very well that she was right. The humans deserved their chance to defend themselves against the injustice of the gods. But fear invaded her. A fear that she did not want to feel at such a critical moment. Gal, my older sister is right. This has to be done. Humanity has everything right to. She couldn't finish saying it when she saw how the calm and peaceful atmosphere changed drastically. The dark and relaxing sky began to be covered by gray clouds accompanied by purple lightning, and the wind blew with great force. The noise caused by the lightning was so great that it alerted the other Valkyries leaving the room where they were having their meeting to look through a balcony seeing what was happening without understanding why this was happening. Gal, who was witnessing everything in the front row, could see how an orange portal with red touches opened above her, which seemed to be altered by the way it released crimson rays, hitting the ground with force around her 5 meters away, scaring her greatly, and then seeing how the gap brought out something from inside her, scaring Gal a lot. Now terrifying her since it was aimed at her, starting to run from one side to the other only to fly away due to the force of the impact that the object had with the ground. Brunhilde, GLL, she screamed, quite worried. Brunhilde, after seeing how her little sister flew out, jumped from the balcony surprising her other sisters and then did the same. Only unlike them, they fell face down and her feet were like Brunhilde, who was examining a stunned Gal who had her hair singed and raised in a punk style as well as burns on her face. Gal, hey, what was that? He said and then saw how his other sisters approached. 11. Hey dear little sister, he said, drawing Gal's attention. That look suits you very well, he said mockingly, making Gal angry. Gal, shut up, Hlock, to tell the truth that look suits you quite well, he said, making fun of his sister seeing that her face was dirty as well as her dress with dirt. So both little girls started to argue while the other sisters tried to calm them down to avoid an unnecessary fight between them where the result was more than clear since if both of them entered the winner would be Hlock, which would not only be because she had more experience, but because then she would play dirty, and seeing that it was Gal he would simply be playing with her, treating her like a simple child, which was not even a little far from reality. But among all of them there was one, which was the 4th Valkyrie sister Randgriz, who was approaching the crater little by little, ignoring what was happening to her sisters. Being at the edge of the crater, she could see a man lying in the middle of the crater unconscious. This man was Issei himself, who was with a few simple scratches after the hard hit he hit the ground. Randgriz proceeded to approach the unconscious body of the black-haired man, taking him by the arm to place it above his neck and begin to leave the crater, seeing how Gal and Hlock were grabbing each other's hair. Randgriz, sisters, we have a matter here, she said, drawing the attention of all her sisters. 7. And that human? I asked, seeing Issei unconscious being helped by Rangriz. Rangriz, that's what I want to talk to you about, just as I feel this man is not a normal human being, he said, calling everyone impressed. Brunhilde, okay, we have to take him inside so we can find out more about this man. After saying that, her second older sister Hrist approached to help her sister take Issei inside the castle and find out more about him. She knew that the truth was that they were going to be surprised to see who he was and how powerful he really was, and that he could also be useful in the problem they were in. Chapter 7. The Valkyrie sisters were all gathered in a room that looked like an infirmary due to the various beds and medical equipment that were there. They were all looking at Issei, who was lying on a bed, while next to him were Rangriz, Brunhilde, Gal, Hlok, Hrist, Regenleaf, while the others were right in front of him. All looking at him with great curiosity, they all had many questions in their minds until one decided to ask the question that had them in a trance the most. Hlok, where could this human have come from? He asked while poking Issei's cheek. Gal, sister, I don't think it's right for you to do that, he said, trying to make her leave the black-haired man. Hlok, and what will you do, dwarf? She asked before everyone saw how Issei's cape hit her hand so that she would leave him alone. Prower, but what day? Hrist, does this cloak have a mind of its own? She asked while touching one of the tips of the cloak which curled around her finger delicately. Hlok, it doesn't matter, he hit me and I won't even forgive myself for that, she tried to complain while trying to hit the cape, but it separated from Issei and attacked her Kaya. Get this thing off my face, she said, falling to the ground trying to remove the cape from her face. Brunhilde, okay, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen, she said, watching her younger sister rolling on the ground trying to take off her cloak. Where does this human come from? Prower, is he at least a human? I asked, looking at my older sister. Regenleaf, well, what if we see his memories to find out who he is and where he comes from? He gave his opinion. Brunhilde, okay, then do it. Regenleaf, and why me? Hrist, why did you propose the idea, sister, she said before hearing a glass break, watching as the cape passed Hlok through several shelves. Sigh, okay, I'll help her. Brunhilde, well, sister Regenleaf, how about you start? Regenleaf, but... Gal, please, sister Regenleaf, he said, making me sigh in defeat. Regenleaf, okay, he said while putting two of his fingers on the black-haired man's forehead. Everyone just remained attentive to what Issei's memories could show, even Hlok, who had a few bruises on her face, and Hrist, who had the cloak in her hands folded. But then they saw an orange glow appear on the forehead of the Supreme Sorcerer, while Regenleaf seemed to be making a lot of effort to be able to see his memories until she separated her fingers from the black-haired man's forehead, where a rather strange seal appeared for them. Brunhilde, what happened? Regenleaf, his mind is protected, she said, quite surprised by that information. Prower, what do you mean it's protected? Regenleaf, he himself created a shield around his mind as a protection system. Rangriz, okay, then this must be a job for me, he said, placing a couple of fingers on Issei's forehead, more specific on the seal. Okay, this is a pretty strong and strange shield. 6. You're saying you can't break that shield? Rangriz, I never said that, it's just that it's going to take me a while to do it, he said as he began to do his work. They all waited patiently for Rangriz to do her job. About 30 minutes passed since the Valkyrie sister Rangriz began to try to break the seal that protected Issei's mind, and to say that they were all quite surprised by that time was too little. Since she had the power to break any shield as if it were nothing, and seeing that it was taking her long to break the protective seal that Issei really had was something surprising, until finally they saw how the seal disappeared, causing Rangriz to let out a big sigh of tiredness. Rangriz, okay. This was a bit exhausting, he said while looking at his hand. Okay, now we can see the human memories, he said, to proceed to see through his memory while projecting it for his other sisters to see. They were all waiting for what could be shown in the black-haired man's memories. They began to see everything, from when he was born, his time as a normal person with his family, his great intellectual capacity being considered the most intelligent young man, his desire to become a great doctor, his entry into the supernatural world. All the heroic acts he accomplished as the hero of the factions, or also known as the strongest Circuitii of all time, his death and rebirth, the different fights he fought against Razor Phoenix, the Cadre Kokabil, the god of lies Loki, Serord Baal, the leader of the heroes, Chow Chow. Rise of him Lucifer and his battle against the fearsome beast of the apocalypse Triexa and the sacrifices he had to make. They were all very surprised and amazed to see the things he had to go through and how the black-haired man grew stronger during that. But the hardest thing was still to come for him, and that was going to be something that was going to fill them with great hatred, and that was the death of his beloved guardian angel, as he called her. How she was taken from his side by simple jealousy, leading him to the path of the mystic arts, forcing him to face the fearsome Dormammu, turning him into the sorcerer supreme and guardian of the Eye of Agamotto. They also saw how Issei used the power of the time gem, going back in time over and over again, trying to save his beloved, his conversation with his former ancestral teacher, the arrival at Cagliostro's library, the centuries he spent absorbing the different beings he never thought he would see, his fight against himself from another timeline. How he came to absorb it, having enough power to break the absolute point, saving his beloved Irena Shidu. How that universe was destroyed by that simple fact. How Issei begged the Watcher to punish him and not the world. How he saw his beloved Irena die this time because of him, and the times he tried to go back in time to avoid all that, but ending up reaching his universe. All of them, upon finishing seeing their memories, had several mixed feelings. They felt sad, amazed, marveled, and furious at everything the black-haired boy had to live through in his universe. Without further ado, they all approached the Supreme Sorcerer and placed their hands on the black-haired boy's chest while they closed their eyes and let a few tears escape from them, and then opened them again, seeing that great hero sleeping without any disturbance. The next morning, it was a new day on the island of the Valkyries, where you could see all of them gathered in a room while they talked about plans and strategies for the upcoming tournament. There were only 48 hours left until it started. They already had the warriors ready who would fight for humanity. Now it was only a matter of knowing who was going to be whose will, but then they were taken out of their thoughts by Gaul, who entered the room in a hurry. Brunhilde, Gaul, what's going on? Gaul, he's not here, he's gone. After saying that, everyone opened their eyes wide, and then they all left the room, running all over the island in search of Issei. They began to search from the infirmary, the bedrooms, the dining room, the training room, and even in the garden. Played the soundtrack. Brunhilde and Gaul walked through the garden, looking in all directions in search of Issei. After a couple of minutes they saw him standing on the shore of the island, seeing nothing, or that was what it seemed to them, since in reality Issei was contemplating the clouds around the island while his hands rested on some flowers that were there, and feeling the wind hit his face, something that Ian has stopped feeling for several centuries. Brunhilde, okay, Gaul, I need you to go get the others, tell them I already found him. Okay? Gaul, of course, older sister Brunhilde, she said, running into the castle to warn her other sisters. Brunhilde was just there watching Issei, who didn't seem to react, so without further ado she proceeded to take a deep breath and then start walking to where the black-haired man was, who seemed not to have noticed the presence of the Valkyrie when in reality I have noticed her. Issei, this isn't my universe, right? He said / asked, still without turning around. Brunhilde, how? Issei, I felt when they reviewed my memories. Now answer me please. Brunhilde, no, you're not, she said, watching as Issei sat down. Brunhilde proceeded to approach him and sit next to him, watching the calm landscape created by the clouds and the blue sky. She did not understand why he was there. Issei, several centuries locked in a glass prison in the middle of nowhere make you forget several things, he said while running his hand through the grass. I had long forgotten what the air or the grass felt like. Brunhilde felt quite bad at what she heard. She did not expect this man to suffer so much. She was completely unaware of everything Issei suffered, so without further ado she would try to help him in everything she could. She was also fascinated by what he could do. Without a doubt this was quite an interesting man. Hrist, I'm glad you found it, Sister Brunhilde, she said as she arrived at the place where she was with her other sisters. Rangriz, I hope you are feeling better, Mr. Hyoudou. Issei, Dr. Hyoudou, please miss, he said politely. Regenleaf, he is a great gentleman, but sister, I think we have a small problem, she said, quite nervous about what she was about to say. Brunhilde, what kind of problem, Regenleaf? She asked, feeling that she was not going to like what she was going to hear, and that it would increase her hatred against the gods. Chapter 8. It seemed to be a beautiful, quite calm day on the island of the Valkyries where the little animals could roam freely enjoying the beautiful landscape that this place gave them. Well, that was what it seemed like, since in reality things were very, very busy inside the castle on the island. Brunhild, damn bastard gods. That was the scream that was heard throughout the island and quite possibly 10 kilometers around, scaring all the poor little animals. If you want to know what happened, well, let's go inside the castle to find out what's going on. You could see all the Valkyries with extremely worried faces, and Issei, who didn't understand anything, gathered in front of what appeared to be a fairly fine and well-made wooden door with destroyed silver touches and the entrance blocked, something that Brunhild really had removed. Furious. Brunhild, those damn gods are cowardly bastards, she said while biting a cloth, breaking it with her teeth due to the force she applied. Issei, could you explain to me what's happening? He said as he looked at what was left of that door in pieces. Rias, well, a couple of days ago the gods of this world had come to the decision to exterminate all of humanity. Prower, but our elder sister Brunhild had intervened in the council just before the decision was official, proposing that Ragnarok be carried out. Issei, Ragnarok? The end of all time? He asked doubtfully about what they told him. Rias, well, here is the final battle of God against man, he said, making Issei understand, and well, the gods had accepted since our older sister used her words very well, hurting the pride of the gods. Hlock, or at least that's what we thought. Issei, why do you say that? Regenleaf, that door led us to the place where our champions were gathered, and Gaul, and now that it is destroyed we will no longer be able to do anything to save humanity, he said, making Issei understand how serious the matter was. Brunhild, how many fighters were trapped? Regenleaf, almost all but one, he said, checking a screen where there was a name that Issei was surprised to read. Issei Adam? Brunhild, I knew those gods were cowards, but I never thought they were this strong. Prower, and now what are we going to do, sister? Brunhild, I don't know. Without the other champions humanity will be doomed, and we don't have the time to repair the door. Gaul, so this is the end of the human race? Issei, seeing how the Valkyries were beginning to worry, or rather terrified by what happened, began to wander in his mind about what he had to do, but then he took the rings that he had hanging around his neck, looking at them with nostalgia until he knew what he had to do. The Valkyries, who were still trying to plan what to do, were taken out of their thoughts when they heard the following. New champion added. Analyzing. Name, the Sorcerer Supreme Dr. Hyoudou. Universe, Marvel/DxD. The Valkyries, upon hearing that, immediately approached the screen, seeing Issei's hero name, and immediately turned their gaze to him, seeing that he was turning his back on them while creating a portal thanks to his two-finger ring, only this time using a little more magic to be able to fulfill his mission. Issei, I'll be back in a moment, he said, crossing the portal, which closed as he did so. The Valkyries, seeing how he was gone, didn't know how to feel. A thought passed through their minds. Did he just want to give us hope and then destroy it? It was the thought that passed through their heads, only to instantly discard it, since remembering the kind of man he was and seeing that he had decided to fight in this tournament, they knew he was a trustworthy man, so they decided to wait to find out what was happening. They waited around almost 5 hours until a portal opened again, letting Issei out, who was hugged by Gaul. Gaul, I thought you weren't coming back. Issei, well, you see, I'm back, he said with a sweet smile while caressing her head. Brunhild, and where did you go? Issei, I just went to get more help, he said while more people came out of the portal, impressing the Valkyries with the help he managed to get. 1. So this is the world we have to save? Asked a man wearing pirate clothes. 2. Okay, I'm very impressed by this, said a man with silver hair and red clothing. 3. I hope these so-called gods are warriors worthy of my strength, said a man of great muscle and height. 5. So you're going to be my new companion, said a voice, drawing everyone's attention, seeing that it was none other than the father of humanity. Brunhild, I'm glad to hear that you managed to escape safely, Adam. Adam, sure, now tell me, are they my classmates? He said /asked, seeing how they started to argue. 6. Tell us, why would we have to participate in this tournament if it doesn't affect us in any way? Asked a man wearing a red jacket. 7. Please, these people need us, we must help them. 8. So what? This world belongs to them, not to us. Issei, I went to ask them to support me in this. 9. And I still don't understand why you want our help. 10. In fact, this isn't even your world as you told us. 11. Then why are you getting involved in a battle that isn't even yours? So everyone started arguing until a shot rang out, silencing everyone and revealing that it was the first champion recruited who appeared to be a pirate. 1. You heard me very well, please. In my world we had impressed a goddess in her human form so that we could have the power of the ocean for ourselves. But the consequences were to open the doors to cruel and ruthless people and beings who greatly enjoyed the suffering of others. 2. And your point is? 1. My point is that in this world people suffer the same injustices as in mine, he said, making everyone pay attention. Even the Valkyries, it is better when people do not make a living with deals with twisted creatures or pacts with cruel and unjust gods. But from the sweat of our brow and the strength of our backs, and you know I do not lie, he said, receiving nods from the others and a look of great fascination from little Gaul gentlemen. Ladies, will you participate in this tournament? Or not? After that question there was a slightly awkward silence until it was broken with a big yes, accompanied by several battle cries and roars, as well as comments like, "We will kick those bastards' asses, it's time for them to learn about humility, we will crush their pride like a nut. We will give them a beating they will never forget." Those and more comments were present while the Valkyries saw this in amazement at the decision made by the champions of other universes, and Brunhild looked at Issei, who also looked at her, seeing how she gave a slight bow in gratitude for what he did. Without a doubt humanity had returned to the game, and this time it came with everything to show the gods what they could do. Chapter 9. The day had arrived, the day that would begin the fight that would decide the fate of the entire human race. Right now we will focus on a coliseum that was floating in the clouds where all the gods of different religions and pantheons were, as well as several humans who had the fortune to see in the front row how their hopes were destroyed after the defeat of their champions, in addition to the fact that the tournament was also going to be broadcast to the entire world so that the other humans would not miss a single detail of what was happening in the coliseum. Gods and humans were gathered together sharing a single common thought. Both sides wanted the tournament to begin already, being the only thought they shared, since other than that they were different. The gods wanted to crush the hopes of the humans in order to have more satisfaction by eliminating them, while humanity wanted to survive and provide that they deserved at least the right to defend themselves, and everything was seen by the most important gods who were on the royal balcony. Aphrodite, wow, I didn't think so many people would come to see this, she said, being a little impressed by the number of gods and humans present. Shiva, nah, whatever. I say we're just losing our cool with this. White Crow, you're right. Black Crow, it's ridiculous. God versus man is like putting an ant against a boot. Hermes, personally, I feel like we got a big surprise in this tournament. Don't you think so, Father? Zeus, I wouldn't be so sure about that, Hermes. After all, I decided not to give the humans that chance. Hermes, what are you talking about, Father? White Crow, explain yourself, old man. Zeus, let's say I decided to destroy humanity's last hope for survival. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to destroy it completely, but I highly doubt that just one human could defeat us. Black Crow, what did you say, Grandpa? Hermes, so you decided to cheat, he said seriously. Zeus, ha ha ha, Hermes, we are gods and we should not lower ourselves to such ridiculous things as this. Besides, it was not me who prevented Brunhild from summoning her champions, it was her, he said while the figure of a woman entered from the entrance to the balcony. Its appearance could not be seen. Hermes, so you were the one who stopped humanity from fighting back. I only did what Zeus ordered me to. Shiva, wow, for someone who is half human I'm surprised you don't care what happens to your species, she said in a calm and bored manner as she looked at the stadium. On the humanity side, Brunhild and her sister Gaul could be seen walking among all the people, seeing how they were somewhat nervous about what could happen. There were several who did not believe in the existence of the gods, but now with what was happening they were beginning to see things in a very different way. Heimdall, hello everyone, welcome to the final battle of God versus man. Ragnarok, said the god through a golden horn so that everyone could hear him. Today will begin the battle that will decide the fate of the human race. It will be a fight lasting 19 rounds, he said, full of emotion, while everyone shouted in retirement. The first team that manages to get 10 victories will be considered the winner. Will humanity manage to win and live another 1,000 years, or will the gods take the victory and annihilate the entire human race? After asking that, the humans immediately became scared because if they lost they would be exterminated. It was something that really made their hair stand on end. One of them even began to pray to his god Buddha to allow them to win Ragnarok and thus be able to survive. But in that his prayers would be interrupted by Brunhild. Brunhild, humans, stop praying. The enemy we must defeat are the very gods you pray to. They have no intention of helping you. They just want to exterminate you at all costs, she said seriously until she reached the balcony where she would see everything with her sister Gal. Heimdall, all right, let's start this fight. In the first round, representing the gods, we have Zeus. Heimdall, wait a moment, he said, calling everyone's attention. Brunhild, if you give up now, maybe I'll reconsider and eliminate only most of the humans. Brunhild, wow, you are a kind god, she said in a sacred voice. Zeus, surrender, Brunhild? After all, you only have one champion in your ranks, he said, greatly impacting the humans. Do you really think a human can win the 10 victories against the gods? Brunhild, you're right, Zeus. A man cannot fight the gods alone, she said, making Zeus laugh. But let me tell you that I already know the story about your new pawn, she said as she turned her gaze to the mysterious woman. What are you talking about, Brunhild? The woman asked, approaching the light, revealing that she was Valeria Lucifer, the current Hakuryuko. Brunhild, well, let me tell you that you are not the only one to travel to this world of your universe, Lucifer, she said with an arrogant smile. No one understood what she was saying until they felt a cold, bloodthirsty air in the air, in addition to hearing some wails, which were several. Then everyone turned their gaze back to Brunhild, who had a mocking smile, while behind her in the darkness they could distinguish a dark mass that was written, revealing several figures of animals and other beasts that were slowly forming until they became a man. So what you told me was true, Brunhild, said the man, approaching the light, revealing that he was Issei Valeria Lucifer. It's been a long time, he said seriously, but at the same time full of hate. Valeria, Issei, is it really you? Issei, the one and only. Valeria, Issei, I'm very glad to see. I tried to say sample. She displayed her dragon's wings to fly to where he was and hug him with all her strength until a streak of energy passed by her, stopping her. Issei, don't think that I have forgotten what you have done to me and everything that you have taken from me, he said, turning his back to start walking through the halls of the arena. Valeria, Issei, she was just an interference for us. We are destined to be together. Issei, you took away what I loved most and now I will destroy you, he warned her while making her voice thicker and more demonic. Everyone was scared by that warning since it did not sound empty at all. She was willing to keep her word to kill her, but among them all, there were a couple of women, Brunhild and Aphrodite, who found that form of intimidation quite attractive and exciting, since even Zeus himself was afraid of the supreme sorcerer. Aphrodite, wow, I really like this boy. I'm going to keep his soul when all this is over, she said, seeing the black-haired boy annoying Lucifer and Valkyrie greatly. Brunhild, cough, well, as I was saying, he returns with hope for us, since he will not only participate, but he also took charge of finding other champions so that humanity could survive against you. Zeus, well, let's see how much your champions can take then. Heimdall, well then, introducing the first representative of the gods, he said as the sky darkened and several bolts of lightning fell. He is the Viking of thunder, the berserker of strength, the strongest of the Nordic gods. His strength is unmatched, he said, and then saw a bolt of lightning fall to the ground to reveal a red-haired man holding a large hammer sitting on a throne. He is the great Nordic god of thunder, Thor. He had barely appeared and had already begun to infuse a great pressure in the air that froze humanity while the gods began to cheer his name. But then Thor turned his gaze to Issei, who did the same while making his eyes shine a little to a crimson color, causing Thor to shudder as he felt the black-haired man's aura. Thor, that guy, he's strong, but how far will his strength go? He thought as he stood up from his throne. Heimdall, well, here is the first representative of the human race, the first Adam Septo to be crushed, he said before hearing the beat of several drums. Wow, so this man really plans to give his neck for nothing, he said, watching as several people in armor began to play several lion-shaped drums while a large door opened to let in the first champion of the human race. Heimdall, Okay, let's see his biography, he said while taking out a tablet where the information of the champions of humanity came from. This man, since he was born, was considered the strongest of the human race. He traveled around Britain fighting against countless opponents, protecting the innocent. It is said that he is the very incarnation of pride, he said while great footsteps began to be heard coming out of the door. He joined a team that was made up of a sorceress, an immortal, a fairy, a giant, a toy, and a demon, calling themselves the Seven Deadly Sins, he said while a large muscular figure came out of the entrance. He is the great lion of pride, the very personification of pure strength. Escanor. Escanor, so you're going to be my opponent? It seems that you are a little weaker than you look, he said, leaving everyone in shock by what he said. Thor, this guy is also strong, he said while staring at Thor. Heimdall, this will be a duel between the strongest. I can feel the tension radiating in the stands. Fray, Thor friend, is just a simple human, crushed with a single blow from your mace. Hey Escanor, the cry was heard from the side of humanity. You better teach that arrogant god a good lesson. Fray, but what an arrogant man, he said before seeing how that man carried a large barrel of beer and drank it suddenly to reveal an albino with a scar on his cheek. Ban, ha ha ha, god versus man, best show for a good drink, don't you think so, Captain? He said as he hugged a man smaller than the one with the blonde hair. Meliodas, ha ha ha, you're right, Ban, this will definitely be interesting. Elizabeth/Aline, sigh, these two will never understand, they said while shaking their heads, supported by the others. Merlin, Escanor, please, you have to win, don't let that god beat you, she thought, worried about Escanor. Heimdall, you don't know how long I've been waiting to blow this horn, he said as a tear rolled down his face. According to Norse mythology, when Heimdall raises and blows the wind of doom, the final battle between God and man, Ragnarok, begins. Everyone was waiting for what would happen. Without a doubt, this day would go down in history as the day when men had the strength and courage to face the gods. Chapter 10, First Round Remake. Round 1, the God of Thunder versus the Lion of Pride. Humans and gods were waiting to see what might happen from now on. They saw how Heimdall raised the horn of the end and began to take a breath to blow it. They all saw how the horn began to shine as a current of air was created that was absorbed by the horn until Heimdall released all the air he had accumulated in his lungs and blew the horn. Starting Ragnarok, the final battle of God against man. After finishing blowing the horn, Heimdall gave a big sigh of satisfaction and then quickly stuck to a wall so as not to be in the danger zone. Heimdall, now, this is the fight between the strongest Norse god and the strongest of the human race. The fight will begin now, he said before becoming bewildered at what was happening. Woman, and that? Man, what are you doing? Both gods and men were quite surprised by what was happening. Both gladiators had their weapons lowered, leaving their guard open. It was something that they could not understand what was happening. Heimdall, what's going on? Both warriors are defenseless at the start of the fight, he said as he watched both of them advance towards each other. Now the two of them are getting closer to each other, while they're defenseless. Zeus, ha, he doesn't care about his opponent's move. It seems he doesn't want to keep waiting to see what happens. Shiva, it seems so. Ban, ha ha ha, that's our big guy Escanor. Meliodas, this Escanor will never learn. Fray, and who does that human think he is? Doesn't he fear anything? All the holy knights began to cheer the name of Escanor, the Lion of Pride, while the gods and men saw the reactions of the two great gladiators, noticing a great seriousness and coldness in Thor's face, while in Escanor they noticed nothing. He had no traces of anger, sadness, emotion, nothing. It was as if he did not care that he had in front of him the god of thunder himself. Gal, dear sister, do you think that human will endure the battle? It seems that Escanor is the one who is underestimating the power of the gods. Issei, it's not that, Gal, he said, drawing the little Valkyrie's attention. It's not that Escanor is underestimating the power of the gods. Brunhild, it's just that that's how the strongest life, she said with a slight smile, seeing what was happening. Escanor and Thor continued to approach each other, still showing those expressions on their faces, until they stopped, standing right face to face while everyone watched as two large auras were created around them. Thor was surrounded by a sky blue aura accompanied by rays, while Escanor they seemed to be surrounded by golden flames with orange touches. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen until they saw Thor try to raise his hammer in order to attack Escanor. but he blocked the attack by putting his axe in front, and the two of them began to wrestle to see who was going to be the dominant one. Escanor had decided to put a little more force and push his axe forward, causing Thor to begin to give ground little by little until the Lion of Pride hit the hammer, causing the God of Thunder to be thrown backwards, crashing against the wall, being a little stunned by that unforeseen movement of the human, who quickly approached Thor, raising his axe to try a cut. But in the end, Thor blocked the attack with the handle of his hammer, causing him to be the one who is now thrown to the opposite side. But with the difference that Escanor stuck his axe into the ground to stop the path and then collided his weapon with Thor's, who tried to attack him, creating a strong current of air that hit the entire place, and the floor of the arena where they were fighting began to crack. "Heimdall, it's an even duel, even their strength is similar," he said, amazed by the strength of the two titans. "I didn't expect it to become such a good battle." "Woman, you can do it, Escanor," she said with a smile. "Man, that's great. It's really impressive to see a human fight against God." "Zeus, humans delude themselves into calling him worthy. The truth is that they have not yet seen the true power of the God of Thunder." Thor had stepped back a little and then made one of his hands shine and then gave a kind of scratch, revealing 4 rays forming a claw that went in the direction of Escanor, who raised his axe and dropped it with force, raising a smoke screen with some rocks, causing Thor's attack to impact on them, protecting him. Then the smoke dissipated, revealing Escanor without a scratch, while he had one of his fingers raised that was creating a large red ball similar to a mini sun. "Escanor, cruel son," he said as he threw his attack against Thor, who used his hammer to protect himself, although he never expected the following to happen. Flame of Pride. A huge explosion covered Thor, as well as creating a large curtain of heat that made everyone start to sweat, even in parts they never thought could sweat. After the flames dissipated, Thor could be seen with slight burns and a slight smile. Escanor still remained calm without showing any sign of emotion. Thor threw himself against Escanor again, starting to clash their weapons over and over again, creating strong currents of air until in the last one Thor hit Escanor in the chest with the handle of the hammer, making him step back and then making his hands shine again while lightning came out of them. "Brunhild, that's it." "Gaul, but how?" "Heimdall, wait, that's lightning," he said before seeing how Thor raised his hammer with both hands. Before Thor was defenseless. "Now he's raising the hammer with both hands," he said before seeing how Thor seemed to fall on his back. "Wait, he's falling. He's losing his balance and falling backwards," he exclaimed before seeing how Thor stopped falling, leaving the hammer a few centimeters above the ground. "Wait, he's not falling, he's just taking flight." "White Raven, Thor is already thinking about striking that blow. He must be tired of fighting." "Black Crow, no, he's probably responding to the great strength and bravery that humans showed him by responding in kind." "White Crow, that's impossible." "Black Crow, if it weren't like that, he wouldn't be able to strike that blow against a mere human." Thor's hammer. History. In Norse mythology, as the story goes, there was an event that forever changed Asgard, the realm of the gods, well known for its walls that surrounded the city, that withstood the multiple attacks that were attempted against the city, until one day there was an attack that they never believed would happen. A great horde of giants from the land of the Jotun attacked the city, managing to destroy the impenetrable walls of the kingdom of Asgard. The Asgardians never believed that such an attack would happen, since the Jotun attacked separately, and never together. Several warriors died fighting against these creatures of colossal size until only one warrior remained, Thor, who upon seeing the massacre created by these beasts decided to intervene, thinking that Ivan would be the creatures that would give them what they wanted. Unfortunately for him, he was greatly disappointed. With a single movement with his hammer he managed to kill the 64 Jotuns. "Thor, how boring," he said, sitting on the corpse of a Jotun. From that day on, the gods gave a name to that attack that would demonstrate the bravery and strength that Thor used in his attack against the Jotuns. Present, Thor was prepared to give his attack while his hammer released several rays, while Escanor watched that without caring. Thor, already having his attack ready, launched himself against Escanor, beginning to raise his hammer, and then let it fall with great force against the Lion of Pride, creating a great flash accompanied by a strong blizzard that hit the entire Colosseum, and then a huge curtain of dust could be seen covering the entire arena. "Gaul, so this is the true power of a god," she said, shocked by what she saw. "We will never win. God against man. Who came up with such stupidity?" she said / asked as she fell to her knees. Brunhild, Gall, get up now. Gall, big sister Brunhild, I can't, I don't want to keep watching. Brunhild, you must not give up, you have to see, she said while helping her sister stand, you have to see how humanity shows its true strength. In the arena, through the smoke you could see Thor holding his hammer with both hands, but the strangest thing was that it seemed like he was using force. The hammer began to rise little by little. No one understood what was happening until finally the dust cleared, revealing Escanor, who only had a few scratches and was holding the hammer with his free hand. All the gods were shocked by that. A human blocking the attack that exterminated 64 Jotuns in a single movement with the palm of his hand. Escanor, I must admit, you are not as weak as you appear, he said as he pushed back the attack and slashed Thor's chest, destroying the entire upper part of his clothes and leaving a large wound. Heimdall, it can't be, he has hurt Thor, the human Escanor has hurt Thor. Forseti, this is impossible, he said in shock like the other gods. Escanor only proceeded to give a small laugh of pride while Thor touched his chest where the wound was, watching how the blood flowed non-stop from it, and then he saw Escanor, who had stopped laughing, and gave him a small smile like the one he gave Esterasa before he hit him. Thor was undoubtedly experiencing new sensations which were pain, doubt, anger, and now excitement. Thor, damn you, it's a shame you're nothing more than a simple human, he said angrily at first, and then put on a challenging smile as he stood on guard. Escanor, do you really think I'm just a simple human? He said, putting himself on guard. Forks. There was no doubt that this was going to be an unparalleled battle that Thor was going to experience, and it was going to be against a simple human, which filled him with even more excitement. History. According to Escanor's biography, he was born the youngest son of a royal family. He suffered abuse by his older brother, who always dedicated himself to hitting him while his parents stood by doing nothing. But there was something they didn't know about their youngest son. Escanor was born being the strongest of them all. In one of the constant games that his older brother had with him, Escanor got fed up with continuing to endure the constant abuse of his older brother, and ended up breaking his arm, which ended with the sad consequence of being branded a monster. Luckily for him, there was a villager who only considered him as a helpless child and decided to give his life so that his prince lived. Several years later, Escanor became well known in Britain for the great strength he had acquired during his long years of traveling across the country, eliminating all kinds of monsters or demons that terrified entire towns with a single punch, after he joined the 7 deadly sins, a unique order of holy knights of great strength that was dedicated to high-level tasks. Then came the war against the 10 Commandments, where great sacrifices were made in order to obtain victory against these demons of great power, and their superior, the Demon King. Among those sacrifices was that of Escanor, who had given his life in order to obtain victory and bring peace to all of Britain and the world. Present, Escanor and Thor have clashed their weapons again while their faces were devoured with slight smiles, and throughout the Colosseum the cries of retirement and excitement of the gods and men could be heard. Zeus, this is extremely strange. Hermes, Father Zeus, what's wrong? He asked, looking at his father but not getting an answer. Is there something bothering you? He said, speaking loudly into Zeus' ear. Zeus, it is impossible for such a thing to happen. Hermes, what's happening, father? Are you wondering how a human can face a god? He shouted louder into Zeus' ear, causing Valeria to laugh a little. Zeus, shut up, don't yell in my ear or you'll make me deaf, and believe me, I'm not deaf yet, he scolded his son, who just sighed. Although that is also true, human weapons should shatter when they collide with Thor's hammer. It is impossible for a human weapon to be able to stand up to a weapon of the gods. Valeria, well, seeing that it was Issei who brought them together, I already have an idea of what Zeus did, she said seriously while looking at the black-haired man who looked at her coldly. Zeus, you're right, surely that man and Brunhild did that to even things out, he said while looking at the Valkyries. Gaul felt scared when he received Zeus' gaze, trying to hide behind his sister, who was serious, but what surprised her, Zeus, made Aphrodite jealous and Valeria Lucifer very furious, was seeing how Issei stood in front of them like a protector while making his eyes shine like 2 intense crimson flames, scaring Zeus a little with that intense murderous look, while Brunhild felt her heart beat strongly seeing how Issei cared for her. The battle was still ongoing, Escanor and Thor had clashed their respective weapons, starting a contest of strength to see who dominates whom. Everyone was extremely impressed by such a display of brute strength on the part of the two gladiators until Escanor, with a quite good and masterful move, disarmed Thor to proceed to try a blow with his axe. But Thor managed to cover himself with one of his arms. But the impact had been so strong that even his arm that was covered with a metal glove began to crack to the point of breaking and making Thor retreat several meters. Heimdall, I.D. destroyed a divine treasure. The human Escanor destroyed a joint breaker. He destroyed it as if it were a cornflake. Gall, that was really impressive. Forseti, this is impossible. All the humans began to cheer the name of the Lion of Pride for that great achievement he had achieved, while the gods were extremely shocked to see how Escanor's strength could even destroy one of the strongest divine treasures that existed. Everyone thought that having Thor disarmed, he was going to take advantage of it. But then they saw how Escanor dropped his axe and began to hit Thor with his bare fist, causing him to start bleeding from his mouth. Thor, human, why don't you use your axe to attack me? Are you underestimating me? Escanor, don't talk nonsense. Unlike you so-called gods, I am not a coward to attack someone unarmed like that, he said, making the gods feel like their pride was broken as well as feeling great anger. But Thor, he only felt more excited to hear those words. Thor, then we continue with this fight, he said, returning the blows that he gave him, and the two of them started fighting bare knuckle. Gods and men were shocked by such a display of bravery in both gladiators as they went at it bare knuckle. No one dared to say anything, nor was the slightest sound present in the Colosseum. But that great silence that had been present for several minutes was broken by the screams full of emotion of the gods and humans as they watched Thor and Escanor hit each other with great force in different parts of the body, bathing the place in saliva and blood that they managed to release from their mouths and wounds that were created. Forseti, come on Thor, you can crush that useless human. Ban, come on Escanor, throw all those teeth at that dumb arrogant barbarian. Forseti, how vulgar. Ban, look, the Four Eyes calls me vulgar when he is also vulgar, he said, bothering the god Forseti. But then a loud bang would take them out of their discussion, seeing how Escanor and Thor held each other's necks, hitting each other quite hard, creating currents of air that hit the entire arena. But there was something strange. Escanor didn't seem to be tired. In fact, it was noticeable that each time his blows became stronger and his muscles increased more and more. That was something that both men and gods could not believe in themselves who this guy was, how it was that he became stronger and stronger with each blow they gave each other. Gall, dear sister Brynhild, he said while giving small tugs to the skirt of the eldest Valkyrie, drawing her and Issei's attention. I think Zeus is watching us in a fixed and sinister way. And just as Zeus said, his gaze was focused on the Valkyries and the sorcerer, although he was not the only one, since Valeria also had her gaze full of hatred focused on Brynhild and Aphrodite, who had a flirtatious look and made her breasts stand out with the intention of making Issei fall for her charms. But Issei only had a serious look as he ignored the goddess, and looked seriously and defiantly at the father of the gods until a comment took him out of his thoughts. Brynhild, I swear I'm going to deform that pretty face of that unbearable hitch Aphrodite, she said through her teeth so that Gall wouldn't hear her, but she noticed how Issei gave her a slight smile, making her blush with embarrassment. Gall, older sister, why does Zeus look at us like that? Brynhild, huh? Maybe he thinks we did that, although the truth is that we didn't actually do the will, she said with a mocking smile. Flashback 2 hours into Ragnarok on the island of the Valkyries. The large group of Valkyrie sisters could be seen talking about a topic of great importance, and that was about who would be the right human to face the Norse god of thunder Thor. They all discussed who to send to the first round until Issei, who was resting a bit listening to the discussion, decided to intervene to calm the matter down. Issei, okay, calm down, I already have the first champion to face Thor. Randgriz, and who would be the one to face the Norse god of thunder? Issei, that man would be Escanor the Lion of Pride, he said while a hologram of the aforementioned appeared. Hlock, that man? Are you sure he's the one? Issei, there is no safer bet. Besides, there is a secret of him. The sun, the higher the sun is, the stronger he will become. Brynhild, okay, it's the safest bet we can have, and we don't know what other gods will participate, so it would be best to send him against Thor. Poor, but there are also Thor's sacred treasures to consider. Hrist, the Joyern Breaker gloves and Mjolnir. Regenleaf, that's right, I think it would be best for Sister Rangriz to go with that Escanor guy. After all, she has the power to destroy shields, she could destroy the Joyern Breaker, and thus make it so Thor can't use Mjolnir. Gall, that's a great idea, Sister Regenleaf. Brunhild, well then Rangriz you will be. No, said a man entering the room, being none other than Escanor. I don't want to be given a partner for this fight. Brunhild, but you won't be able to. Escanor, do you really think I can't beat this so-called god of thunder? Gall, but Escanor, the gods are. Escanor, little one, where I come from I have faced monsters, demons and gods, he said, impressing everyone by what he said except Issei also. It is better that this young lady prepares to be with another of the other warriors. I think it will be for the best. End flashback. Brunhild, to tell the truth, I was surprised that this human was able to stand up to the god Thor. In the arena, Thor and Escanor were holding hands, trying to see who of them was going to be the one to give ground, starting to create a crater beneath them that grew every time they increased the strength of their grip until Escanor pulled Thor, headbutting him, making him retreat a few meters. Escanor, this fight is something unique. This is the first time we see how the great Thor is in a bind like this, he said before hearing a strange sound. What? And that sound? He said, starting to hear how that sound began to sound like a drum. Is it a drum? Or no, of course not, it's a heart, the lake of a heart that comes from Mjolnir, he said as they watched the hammer began to give off a great heat and began to melt the sand. Odin. At last, it was about time for it to happen, he said, watching as the Mjolnir began to break while several red veins appeared from between the cracks. Absolutely everyone was shocked to see that, except for Escanor, who didn't seem to care. Odin and Zeus were happy to see that Thor's true power was going to be demonstrated, and then there was Thor, who approached Mjolnir while removing the last glove he had, throwing them aside, creating a micro crater, and then lifting Mjolnir, as if it were nothing. While powerful rays came out of his body and his power increased monstrously. Thor, I must admit, human, you really are someone very strong. Escanor, thank you, although it was to be expected coming from someone like me. Thor, you sure are proud. Escanor, it's not for anything that I'm the lion of pride. Thor, well, before I finish with you I have something to ask you. Why do you fight for these men knowing that they are not from your world? Escanor, why did you fight for them? That's easy to ask, he said as he put his axe on his shoulder. It's because in the end I'm also a human, and it doesn't matter that they're not from my world, he said, impressing everyone with his answer. Thor, so you're not here to fight for fun? Escanor, is that why you fight? For fun? Thor, I only live for that. I only live to find the perfect opponent that can give me what I've always wanted, and you gave it to me, Escanor, he said, drawing attention. You made me feel pain, fear, doubt, and excitement. Don't you fight for the same thing? Escanor, sigh, I have a question for you, Thor. Do you know what the difference is between the strong and the strongest? I asked only to receive a denial from Thor. The strong protect each other, but the strongest protect others, and I am one of the strongest, he said, making the humans feel protected and loved by someone who could perhaps be considered a god. Thor, definitely you are someone very impressive, he said as he prepared to attack. So do me a small favor, Escanor, don't die, he said as he proceeded to throw his hammer while it was firing lightning bolts. Thor just waited patiently for Mjolnir to be a few centimeters away from him, and then proceeded to hit it with his axe, deflecting it from its trajectory, causing it to fly into the sky. But Escanor sensed something. That attack was not aimed at him with the intention of harming him, and he knew that when he saw that he could deflect it very easily. Thor had not thrown it with all his might, he was plotting something else, and indeed Thor had launched himself against Escanor even though he was unarmed. Everyone he thought that he had lost his mind to do that until they saw how Mjolnir returned to him with much more strength than he expected, since Escanor's blow made it have much more strength. Brunhild, impossible, is that? She said, terrified by what was going to happen. Black Crow, it's that attack from when he fought against his mortal enemy, the World Serpent. White Raven, that was the only time Thor ever used it, it's the same attack. All the gods believed that victory was more than assured, while humanity was quite worried when seeing the power of that attack, and even more so when seeing that it had been increasing thanks to Escanor's blow, which put them on guard to be able to resist that attack. But they also saw how a big smile began to form on both of their faces. Thor. Breaker Thor's hammer, that was what he said as he dropped the great Mjolnir with force, creating a great flash that illuminated the place until it disappeared, allowing Escanor to be seen blocking the attack with his axe while holding it with both hands. Heimdall, he's still standing, he shouted, impressed by the human's strength and endurance. All the humans began to shout excitedly at such a display of strength. Even the gods could not believe it. A human withstanding the most powerful attack of the god of thunder. That was not possible. But then they noticed something. Escanor was shaking. No one understood what was happening until they heard something in him that broke, and he fell on one knee. Thor, I can't believe it. Thor's attack, although inconclusive, has shattered Escanor's body. All the humans upon hearing that were shocked to see Escanor on his knees in front of the god of thunder, who only had his gaze seriously on the expressionless face of the Lion of Pride. It seemed that he did not feel any pain. Thor only raised his Mjolnir again to deliver the coup de grace, but something inside him told him that he should not do it. It was preventing him. Even though he heard the gods tell him to do it, he didn't want to. Gaul. Oh no, this is very bad. Escanor, you must surrender. This is the only way you will be able to live, she screamed desperately at what was happening. Issei. Ah, the sun, he said, feeling how it was hotter than before, and then seeing how the sun was almost at its highest point, and then smiling. What's wrong, Escanor? Was everything I read about you a lie? Aren't you supposed to be the strongest human in your world, he shouted, drawing everyone's attention. Ben, he's right, he shouted, now calling his attention. If this is a joke in bad taste, then I don't find it funny. You are the strongest human of all. The one who rises above the other races, so start acting like one, he shouted seriously, and angrily seeing his partner kneeling in front of Thor, who lowered his hammer, knowing what they wanted to do. Lift that ass, Escanor. Woman, if he's right, Escanor, get up, she shouted, supported by the others. Shiva, what a thing, do you still want me to fight? Humans aren't very cruel. Valeria, they are humans. What did Shiva expect? Aphrodite, although you have to admit that that human, he really was impressive. Heimdall, but it's all over now, although to tell the truth I also want him to get up. But in this state it's impossible, he can't fight anymore. He can't, and that's very, he said in a whisper before feeling the infernal heat and the screams of encouragement from humanity. What's happening? Escanor began to give off an enormous current of heat and his entire body began to smoke. People continued to shout his name in order to make him get up, but what he was going to see would be something epic, something that would not only demonstrate the power of humanity, but would also make Thor change his way of thinking about humanity. In that, a great whirlwind of fire surrounded Escanor, while the sun finished positioning itself at its highest point. Merlin, witness this greatness, he said, drawing everyone's attention. When the sun finishes reaching its highest point is when Escanor becomes the reincarnation of power, the only one, he said as Escanor emerged from the whirlpool of fire, only bigger and more muscular, and with a big smile. Everyone was really impressed by Escanor's transformation. It was undoubtedly intimidating. In addition to the heat he gave off, Thor, on the other hand, only gave a huge smile when he saw that after many centuries, he had finally achieved it, an opponent who was capable of giving him the fight he had dreamed of so much. Ben, you see, it's not for nothing that Escanor is the strongest of us. King, Captain, you faced Escanor in that way. What do you think? Meliodas, there is certainly a big difference, he said, looking at the great King Escanor without them realizing it. Those two fools helped each other overcome their limits. Both warriors stared at each other as their faces were devoured by big smiles. Everyone could feel the great tension of the moment, making them scream with excitement, waiting for the winner. They were undoubtedly on the verge of the climax of the fight. Thor proceeded to throw his Mjolnir to repeat the attack while Escanor raised his axe until he was in the same position as the sun, in addition to absorbing all the heat and power of his body. Merlin, that's it, I can't believe it, he's really going to do it. Diane, what are you talking about, Merlin? Merlin, Escanor, you're going to do the attack that you never used in all these years that you were with us. Gauter, and what attack would that be? Merlin, divine execution, he said, seeing Escanor's position ready to attack. Thor just saw that with a huge smile and then stretched out his hand, receiving the Mjolnir, ready to repeat his Thor's hammer breaker attack, while Escanor, who had already gathered all his power and heat in Rita, proceeded to perform his divine execution movement. Both collided their attacks, creating a strong blizzard that hit the place and the islands around the Colosseum. the flash did not let them see who was the one who could remain after this great clash of powers, and that a huge explosion was created that made everyone fall to the ground by the force of it while a large curtain of smoke rose. No one knew who had won until everyone saw how someone was on their knees in front of someone's body. Without a doubt, one of the two had won this contest, and that was it. Heimdall, the winner of the first round in Ragnarok, is. Chapter 11. The first round of Ragnarok had ended with the powerful god of thunder Thor as the victor, who was on his knees looking at the lifeless body of the Lion of Pride Escanor. All the gods were shouting his name as well as mocking humanity, but Thor. He was looking at the lifeless body of his opponent, while remembering over and over again the words he told him before falling in battle. The strong take care of each other, but the strongest protect others. Without a doubt those words had changed Thor's mind, and he got up as best he could because despite being victorious he did not escape the consequences very easily as he had a broken leg, second-degree burns all over his body, he had lost an eye and also an arm. Without a doubt his condition was disgusting, and yet the gods did not bother to even ask. "Hey, are you okay?" Without a doubt they were the most repugnant and dark beings of all, and Thor had finally opened his eyes to see that truth. Thor, without a doubt, they deserved to live, he said while looking at humanity, that he was very sad for the loss of one of his greatest warriors, and we are not the ones to choose their destinies. After saying that he saw how Escanor's body began to shine a sky blue as it began to break as if it were a mirror. Everyone remained silent, the gods, since they were the only ones who spoke and saw what was happening. It was something they did not understand until they saw how Escanor's body completely broke into several pieces as if it were glass and faded with the wind, while Thor had a sad look seeing the pieces of Escanor's soul. "Thor, I'm so sorry, Escanor. I finally found the meaning of your words," he said looking at humanity, "but I found it too much." After saying that he proceeded to walk to the exit of the arena leaning on Mjolnir, while the gods continued to mock humanity without taking into account the serious state in which the god of thunder is. The humans saw the state of Thor and how he almost crawled in order to get out of the arena, while the gods ignored the fact that one of their best gods was on the verge of death. Without a doubt the gods were the most hated beings of all right now. "Meliodas, you were one of the greatest, Escanor," he said while pouring himself some liquor. "Ban, you will be remembered as the strongest person in the human race," he said imitating his captain. "King, as the greatest of the 7 deadly sins. Dian, as the most powerful holy knight of all. Gauter, and the great lion of pride. Merlin, rest in peace, Escanor," she said as she tried to wipe away the tears that fell down her cheeks while being comforted by Elizabeth and Elaine. "Gaul, dear sister, what was that?" I asked but received only silence. Gaul turned to the side watching as Issei's dress and cloak entered a hallway, so he decided to follow them, but when he was almost at the entrance of the hallway he heard the conversation that Issei and Brunhild were having, although it was more like a complaint about what they had just seen. Gaul shook his head watching as Issei had Brunhild against the wall, while staring her straight in the eyes. "Issei, can you explain to me what happened?" he asked, receiving silence from the Valkyrie. "What are you hiding from me, Brunhild?" He asked again just to see how she looked away. "Brunhild, if you are hiding something from me it is better than you tell me." And "Brunhild, Niflhel," she said almost screaming, causing Issei to remain silent. "Issei, what?" "Brunhild, it's what happens when a man, god or any other being dies in Ragnarok," Imoizo explained while trying to see the black-haired man's face but being afraid when trying to see those deep, gray eyes. "Niflhel is the meaning of the destruction of the soul. It becomes nothing, without the opportunity to be reincarnated again." "Issei, and it didn't occur to you to tell me?" "Brunhild, I was worried that you would decide not to participate after hearing this, and now I see that it is true," she said trying to get away from Issei but is pulled by the aforementioned, sticking her to him while looking into her eyes. "Issei, I don't plan on stopping participating, but at least you could have told me that little detail of utmost importance." Brunhild was a little surprised to see that he was still willing to participate in Ragnarok even knowing the consequences if he lost, while Issei looked at those beautiful green eyes of the Valkyrie, feeling his heart warm, and it was something he had not felt for a long time. Brunhild placed one of her hands on his chest while the other was placed on the back of his neck while Issei held her waist. Both felt that this moment was eternal only for them until they were taken out of their paradise. Heimdall, well, we'll be starting round 2 of Ragnarok shortly, so you can all stop and stretch your legs in the meantime. Brunhild, well, it would be best to go and choose the next fighter. Issei, you're right, Gaul, come out of your hiding place, he said, starting to walk while the little Valkyrie came out of her hiding place. Brunhild, what did you see so much? She asked with a sweet smile. Gaul, I didn't see anything, he said, feigning ignorance. 30 minutes later, Issei, Brunhild and Gaul were in a room watching several holographic images of the champions of humanity. Both were looking at who to choose as the next representative of humanity. They had to choose very carefully and wisely since they did not know who was going to represent the gods. Brunhild, now what are we going to do? Gaul, if Escanor, the strongest human of all, couldn't defeat the gods, who could? He said, and then watched as Issei observed a hologram carefully. Issei, well, let's choose this one, he said while pressing the image. Choosing the next representative. Escanor showed that you can fight against a god. Let's see if this one can show that even the gods can feel true terror, he said while the full image of the representative was shown, causing a shiver in the Valkyries. Gaul, will he be the next representative of humanity? He asked. Seeing the name of the next man made his legs tremble, while Brunhild sweated a little thinking about what the next representative of the humans was going to be capable of. Chapter 12, Second Round. Second Round, the God of Destruction versus the Red Machine. Everyone was waiting for the next round of Ragnarok to begin. Both humans and gods were waiting for the next part of Ragnarok to begin. The gods were quite confident that they could win the other rounds that were missing and thus be able to finish once and for all with the entire human race around the world, while the humans waited with hope that the next representative of them could give them hope of being able to show the gods that they were the only ones who decided their destiny. Heimdall, hey, the arena was completely destroyed in the first round, but thanks to the gods it was restored and ready for the next round, he said through his horn so that everyone could hear him while he was in the middle of an arena with Hindu touches. Okay, then let's start the next round, starting first with the next representative of the gods. God, wow, now they really did a great job with the remodeling, he said, amazed by the design. Goddess, yes, it is almost the same as the previous one but with many differences. God, I have a question, he said, drawing everyone's attention. What are they doing up there? Humanity and the gods turned to where the god was pointing, seeing floating stands in which special guests were sitting, in the words of the Sorcerer Supreme, waiting for the second round to begin. The reason why they were there was because they had asked Issei to let them be present during Ragnarok. They knew perfectly well that this would be a problem, but in the end Issei accepted it without problems. Now if the gods had a problem with his decision, they would have to deal with him, something that clearly did not suit them at all. Heimdall, what a battle we have witnessed during this day. The gods began Ragnarok with the victory of the god of thunder Thor, he said while the aforementioned was only standing over the area of the places where the most important gods were Zeus, Odin, Aphrodite, Hermes, Loki, Ares and Shiva. Although the latter was not there having a cold look, but more than anything out of anger at himself for realizing too late what his true purpose was, while the sins only clenched their fists in helplessness. Humanity will manage to snatch this victory from them, he said while the humans shouted supporting the next representative. Now we will see who will be the one to take the victory of the second round. Let's start first with the next representative. Here is the strongest of the Hindu gods. After saying that, several drums began to sound while the water around the ring began to become disturbed, and the clouds began to turn a dark color, and the wind began to blow with great force. Heimdall, this god is known to be one of the strongest. He is the strongest of his faction as well as being known as the great destroyer god Hindu. This god is, he said while a large purple glow began to appear at one end of the ring, and then the next representative of the gods could be seen, the destructor god Hindu Shiva, he said while the aforementioned made his characteristic pose being surrounded by flames. Shiva, I hope my opponent doesn't die from the first hit, he said while having a big smile on his face. God, wow, it's Shiva, without a doubt we will take the victory in this round, he said excitedly as he looked at the god of destruction. Goddesses, without a doubt, humans will now see what we gods are capable of, he said, just as excited as his companion. Heimdall, okay, here's the next representative of humanity, he said as the doors opened on the side of the humanity participants, but nothing happened. It was as if the next representative of humanity had not shown up, The gods began to laugh at that while humanity felt a great nervousness invading their bodies. Gaul, perhaps the fighter you went to find betrayed us. Brunhild, I thought you said he was more than willing to fight for humanity, she said seriously. Issei, just wait, he said with a slight smile. Everything was quite calm. The gods continued to mock humanity. Shiva felt quite annoyed by this. He thought they were taking it as mockery while Heimdall was already about to crown the god of destruction Shiva as the winner of this round until out of nowhere a huge explosion occurred causing the entire Colosseum to tremble, and the ring began to be surrounded by large crimson flames causing a great infernal heat throughout the place in addition to hearing the following that made everyone's blood run cold without understanding why. Nobody understood what was happening. This happened suddenly. Humanity felt their blood run cold while the gods looked at the flames in shock as they recognized them very well. Those were the flames of hell, flames that nobody can control, not even the lords of death themselves, Hades, Hela, Seth, etc. This was something impossible. Could it be that the Lord of Hell himself, Satan, was willing to stand up for humanity? That was the question the gods were asking themselves. Even God himself was asking himself that question. But then they saw an old black scroll appear in Heimdall's hands. He curiously opened it, and began to read to himself what it contained, making him feel true terror when I have finished reading it. Heimdall, here is the next representative of humanity, he said with great terror, calling everyone's attention thanks to his sins committed in life. This man was trapped in the depths of the flames of hell, he said while the flames intensified more. This man fought against different demons and infernal monsters to gain his freedom, among them the great infernal dog Cerberus, the great snake Leviathan, and even went bare-fisted against Satan himself, he said, shocking everyone except Issei. For the battles he fought, he managed to win each of those battles by returning to the land of the living as a great unstoppable destructive red machine, he said while a large silhouette the same size as Shiva was present among the flames. Loved by many, feared by others. The youngest of the brothers of destruction, his name is the Red Machine Cain, he said while the aforementioned came out of the flames revealing his terrifying appearance. Cain, I have come for your soul, he said in a chilling way. No one knew what to say. Fear invaded them. The gods could no longer continue mocking. The fear was so much that even several of them wet their pants. Cain began to approach Shiva slowly and threateningly, who remained very serious. Both stood face to face. Cain did not care at all who he had in front of him. The only thing he wanted was to destroy him, while Shiva remained serious, although deep down he felt true terror at having in front of him the person responsible for the death of Satan. Heimdall, okay, let's start the next battle, he said, and then looked for an escape route, but seeing that the entire ring was surrounded by large crimson flames until a portal opened behind him revealing Issei. Issei, are you going in or do you want me to leave you in the arena? He asked calmly. Heimdall, he accepted the invitation, he said, quickly entering the portal and appearing next to Issei. Brunhild and Gaul Demo started the next fight. After declaring that, everyone turned their gaze to the two gladiators in the arena. The god of destruction and the red machine stared at each other, waiting for the other to strike first, or else that was the case with Shiva. Cain didn't care at all what would happen, but then everyone saw Cain pointing to the sky. No one understood why, so they turned their gaze up, seeing the sky tinged with black with several rays coming out of it until they saw something descending little by little, showing a huge cage. Everyone was surprised by that, but then they saw how Cain connected a strong blow to Shiva's jaw, knocking him to the ground. Shiva got up quickly and tried to connect a punch, but Cain managed to block the attack and connect another blow, stunning Shiva, and thus beginning to hit him multiple times while the cage descended, beginning to be covered by the flames that surrounded the ring, trapping the two gladiators inside its infernal interior. Shiva continued to receive Cain's blows without having the chance to defend himself. Cain managed to grab him by the nape of the neck and one of his arms, kneeing him in the stomach and then hitting him in the face, making him back off. Gaul, that man is really scary. Issei, a little bit, yes, he said, making the Valkyries accompanying him turn to look at him. Brunhild, you have to be kidding, right? That guy is terrifying. Issei, that's right, but the truth is it's not as bad as they think. Heimdall, what do you mean? Issei, well, when I went to his world I saw him behind a child watching how he failed to get a doll of the fighters of the industry where he fought. So he tried, and when he saw that he couldn't either, He destroyed the game and gave all the dolls to the child. It's not as bad as it seems, he said without taking it seriously. Brunhild, Gaul and Heimdall were really shocked by what they heard, but in that they are taken out of their shock when they hear a loud bang, seeing how Shiva had managed to connect a blow to Cain's face, making him back up several meters, and then throw himself at him and land several quick blows before he reacted. But in one of those blows Cain held one of Shiva's fists, hitting him in the face several times and then carrying him on his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, running to one of the corners, letting him fall face first on it, stunning him, and then running to one of the ropes, pushing off with ease to go against Shiva, who still hadn't recovered, and giving him a big kick in his face, throwing him to the ground, and then running again in the direction of the ropes and others, pushing off with them, and giving a double kick in Shiva's face before he could get up completely. Goku, that Cain is definitely someone strong. Krillin, and his movements, they are too powerful. Meliodas, strength isn't everything in a fight. Speed, agility and intelligence also count when devising a strategy. Ban, and let's not forget the way you hit too, he said seriously. Cain held Shiva by the neck, lifting him off the canvas, and then lifted him as if it were nothing and dropped him with force, leaving him on the verge of unconsciousness. Shiva tried to free himself from Cain's grip, which lifted him again and brought him close to his face, looking at him in the eyes, and then slammed him against the canvas again and threw him to the side of the ring, and then walked towards him with the intention of continuing the punishment. Humanity and the gods did not know what to say. This was something out of the ordinary. Shiva was being humiliated by a simple human. Shiva tried to give him a strong blow, but Cain grabbed his arm and yanked it off as if it were nothing, and then gave him a strong blow to the chest, sending him flying against the roof of the cage and then falling in front of Cain, who grabbed him by the head and headbutted him, knocking him to the ground again. Heimdall, this something is shocking. The god Shiva, the great destroyer god Shiva, lost an arm, he said, while everyone saw how Shiva tried to get up, holding on to Cain, who looked at him with indifference. Shiva, wow, without a doubt you are someone very strong, he said before being grabbed by the neck by Cain. Well, now let me clarify that point. After saying that, he broke free from Cain's grip and punched him in the stomach, sending me to the other end of the ring, surprising everyone with that event. But Cain got up as if nothing happened while looking at Shiva seriously, while the god had a big mocking smile, and then he snapped his fingers ready to continue with the fight. Shiva, well, I just have one question for you, human, he said mockingly in the last part while getting into a fighting stance. Wouldn't you care if I destroyed you? He asked with a big smile, causing the gods to start cheering his name. Cain responded by running at full speed against Shiva, who was launched against Cain, their heads colliding, creating a strong blizzard while they both held hands and began to struggle to see who would submit to the other. Without a doubt, this was going to be a very violent and bloody fight that would mark the history of both humanity and the gods. Everyone was more than shocked by the bloody battle that was taking place in the combat arena. Despite how bloody the fight was, they didn't want to even blink for a moment. They didn't want to miss even a moment of the fight, since despite being bloody it was epic, since both gladiators gave their all, in addition to giving it all to the point of making Gaul debate whether or not to watch the battle, since he covered his eyes and covered them every second, praying that Cain would manage to win this hellish battle. Heimdall, this is real mind-blowing, he said, seeing how the arena was almost destroyed and with blood spilled on the floor and in various parts of the cage. The question is, who will win this infernal battle? God 1. You can handle Shiva. Human 1. We trust you, Cain, a little, but we trust. All the gods and men gave their support to their respective champion as they watched the two hit each other with everything they had in their hands. Like Cain, who had grabbed an aluminum trash can, proceed to burst it on Shiva's head, knocking him to the ground too stunned by that blow. Both were badly injured but were still more than willing to continue their battle until death decided to take one of them first. Shiva was missing his 2 lower arms. He had several cuts all over his torso and 3 blow marks on his chest, while Cain had half of his mask broken with blood spilling from his head. His clothes were almost torn apart, revealing a little of his torso full of blood and cuts. Shiva proceeded to get up only to receive a blow to the throat from Cain, causing him to back up to the point of falling out of the ring and falling into the water, while Cain got out of the ring, grabbing Shiva by the nape of the neck, lifting him up, and proceeding to hit him in the face, stunning him to grab him by the shoulders, slamming him back against the edge of the ring and giving him another blow to the face. Come on, brother. I know you can do it, said a goddess who looked very similar to Shiva Sheena, implying that she was her twin sister. Shiva, upon hearing her sister's words, proceeded to get up and land a blow on Cain's stomach before giving him an uppercut and kicking him, making him step back and then running towards him and carrying him on her shoulder to proceed to crash him against one of the walls of the cage, causing it to detach from the rest of the cage and begin to fall little by little. Cain proceeded to head at Shiva and then grab him by the neck and throw him against one of the corners, causing Shiva to write him in pain because of item. The gods saw how the wall of the cage that was impregnated with the flames of hell was going to fall on top of them. They proceeded to move quickly in order to avoid imminent death. The only one who was not lucky enough to get out of the danger area was Shiva's sister, who stumbled, seeing that the cage was about to fall on top of her. She only closed her eyes waiting for death. But after a couple of minutes she felt nothing, not the blow or the horrible burns, but only a strong heat hitting her body, thus opening her eyes, seeing that the cage was just a few centimeters from having crushed her. Sheena turned to look around, noticing everyone with their mouths open with their eyes on the sand, so she decided to turn around, also seeing among the flames a large figure could be seen. At first she thought it was her older brother Shiva, causing her to put a big smile on her face. But that smile turned to a look full of surprise and disbelief when she saw who saved her. It was not her brother, but the fearsome red machine Cain, who was holding with all his strength the lower part of the cage wall, preventing it from crushing Sheena, who could not believe that a human would decide to save her while her own had left her behind to save themselves. Without a doubt her way of thinking about humans had changed thanks to the man in front of her, who put more strength in his grip, slowly lifting the cage to proceed to throw it away, falling somewhere on the earth, demonstrating the abominable strength he had obtained thanks to his multiple battles in hell in order to gain his freedom. Shiva was truly shocked to see Cain's action. Without a doubt they were full of surprises and showed how different they were from the gods. If it hadn't been for him, his sister would have died. Cain was just leaning over, trying to catch his breathing while massaging one of his shoulders and then getting up while twisting his neck to continue the battle. But at the moment of doing so he never expected the following: a kneeling Shiva while thanking Cain for what he did, shocking everyone for such an act, since they knew very well how proud the god of destruction was. "Shiva, I thank you for saving my sister, human," he said while bowing. "I was only willing to fight to win this battle. But now I will do it to find out who of the two is the strongest," he said the last thing with a challenging smile. "Issei, well, leaving these two aside," he said while pointing at Cain and Shiva, "I'll go see where the cage wall fell," he said, creating a portal. "I hope it didn't hurt anyone," he said, crossing it, and then the portal closed behind him. "Gaul, what do you think will happen?" "Brunhild, I'm going to kill Aphrodite and Valeria if they don't leave Issei alone," she said, glaring at the blonde and the silver-haired girl. "Gaul, hey, I was saying because of the fight," he said as he moved away from his sister. "Brunhild, ah, well, we just have to see what's going to happen," she said, a little embarrassed as she tried to hide her reddened cheeks with her hands. "Gaul, calm down, dear sister, I'll keep your secret," he said as he gently and mockingly hit his sister's side, embarrassing her even more. But then a loud bang was heard, directing his gaze to where he heard, seeing how Shiva and Cain gave each other a powerful blow to the face, and then Cain hit Shiva in the stomach, who hit him back in the side, thus beginning to exchange deadly and powerful blows, shaking the entire place, causing the crimson flames to whip with force. Both gladiators fought without any restraint, causing the cage to begin to shatter little by little and then fall in pieces on top of them, creating a huge smoke screen. "Heimdall, this fight is really shocking," he said, watching how the two gladiators hit each other with great ferocity. Humanity and the gods supported their respective champion as they watched them give each other good blows to the point of making each other bleed, until they both gave each other a powerful blow, knocking each other out, leaving them both lying on the ground, shocking everyone with such a display of power between the two of them. Both began to get up little by little as blood ran down their bodies. But the only one who was worse off was Cain, who couldn't get up and was left on his knees with his arms surrendered, while Shiva was standing and walking slowly towards the man surrendered from exhaustion. "Issei, okay, what did I get lost out? I see," he said as he left a portal created next to Gaul and Brunhild after going to look for the cage wall just to see what was happening. "Shiva, you were a great warrior, Cain," he said while engulfing his hand in flames, "but it's time to end this, great warrior," he said, raising his hand ready to deliver the final blow. "I hope you managed to get eternal rest. great red machine Cain, he said, ready to deliver the final blow, but before he could do so, something happened that he didn't expect. Sheena, don't do it, bro, he shouted, appearing between his older brother and the injured man. Sheena, what are you? Sheena, please, brother, spare his life, do it for me, he said in supplication to his older brother. Zeus, don't even think about doing it, Shiva. Now end the life of that monstrosity, he said while standing up from his place. If you don't do it, your sister will pay the consequences, he said with a big smile. Shiva was now against the wall. He didn't know what to do, but seeing his Hetmina standing there protecting that human he fought with while begging him to spare his life, so without further ado he let down his guard while pointing at Heimdall. Shiva, if I remember correctly, the fight will last until one of the two dies or can no longer continue fighting, he said, looking seriously at Heimdall. Heimdall, that's right, Lord Shiva. Shiva, then I win, he said while pointing at Zeus, and I have no need to kill this great warrior. Zeus just clenched his fists ready to enter the arena in order to finish off the three if it hadn't been for an enormous murderous instinct that came from Issei, who was releasing flames around him as well as releasing flames from his eyes ready to kill him if necessary. Zeus decided not to do anything and then sat back on his throne while looking seriously at the supreme sorcerer. Sheena only proceeded to take Cain's arm, trying to lift him up. Sheena, without help I can't lift you up, she said with difficulty. Cain only proceeded to use the strength he had left to get up while Shiva held him by the other arm, and the three of them left the combat arena. Even though humanity lost this fourth round, they did not feel that sadness or that raw taste, but rather they felt grateful that a god had forgiven one of his champions, deciding to welcome this great god with open arms while the other gods felt that great sour taste. Chapter 13. After the previous round ended, where the gods managed to get one more victory for their side, Gyr and one of his older sisters, more specifically Hrist, could be seen walking through the halls of the great place while they thought about what to do, since the gods had managed to gain an advantage from the start by beating the Lion of Pride Escanor and the fearsome red machine Cain. Now they had to find a way to balance things out. Gyr, sister Hrist, what do you think will happen from now on? Hrist, I don't know, Gyr. This is very complicated, and she couldn't finish when she saw someone standing a couple of meters in front of them. The one standing right in front of them was none other than the god of the seas, Poseidon, the god who they say is the most feared of all, and the reaction of the Valkyries did not prove otherwise as they began to back away little by little, trying not to make the slightest noise until they saw how he slowly turned, staring at them, causing an enormous weight on them and making them tremble from the fear they felt. Gyr, dear sister Hrist, I can't move, he said in fear of the gaze of the god of the seas. But that fear worsened when they saw how he walked towards them wielding his trident, and from his gaze it was clear that he did not have very good intentions with them. The Valkyries felt how their weakened legs fell to their knees while the god of the seas broke right in front of them to proceed to take Hrist by the neck, lifting her up face to face with her. Poseidon, you filthy useless half-breed, he said, placing the trident around his neck, I order you to go right now to your older sister Brunhild to tell her that I ordered her to end this ridiculous waste of time, he said, adding more strength to his grip. Hrist, no, I won't, she said with the little air she had. Poseidon, what did you say? Hrist, I said I won't do it. Poseidon, damn dirty half-breed. I am a perfect god, so therefore you must obey me, he said, throwing her to the ground. I guess I need to teach you a lesson, he said, raising his trident. Gyr, please, Mr. Poseidon, I don't finish when I receive a slap from the god, suckling coughing. Poseidon, don't interrupt a perfect god, you dirty half-breed, he said seriously. But then he feels someone grab him by the arm where he had his trident, managing to feel the enormous force that he exerted on him, turning around little by little, meeting a man who was wearing clothes from the 18th century with a slight smile on his face, but he could feel an enormous aggressive instinct coming from that man. Yam, Captain Hector Barbassa. Dimension, Pirates of the Caribbean. Occupation, Mr. Pirate. Barbassa, and you will never again attack a beautiful lady and her adorable little sister in front of my presence, he said seriously, still keeping his smile. Poseidon, what do you think you are, touching a perfect god, dirty mortal? He asked seriously, trying to get away, but was quite surprised to feel Barbassa's tremendous strength. Barbassa, who do you think I am? Jojo just a humble pirate who, unlike you, knows what respect and education are, he said, proceeding to land a punch in the stomach and then another punch in the face, knocking him down. The Valkyries were truly shocked to see how Barbassa had the audacity to hit the god of the seas not once but twice, and he didn't seem to care what he had done as he proceeded to help them up while checking that they didn't have any damage. Barbassa, are you okay? Gear, yes, thank you very much, sir. Barbassa, Captain Hector Barbassa at your service, he said, taking off his hat, making a bow, causing a slight laugh in the Valkyries. But then they felt a huge killer instinct making Barbassa turn around and see a very angry Poseidon pointing his trident at him. Poseidon, I'm going to make you kneel before me so I can kill you, trash, he said, ready to attack. But he sees how Barbassa just crosses his arms and the Valkyries stand behind him watching how they trembled. At first he thought it was because of him, but then he began to feel fear take over his spine and also feel how some tentacles took him by the shoulder, hearing the wails of thousands of beings. Issei, I wouldn't do it if I were you, he said in a dark way, making Poseidon lower the trident. If you don't want to be one of the 1,000 beings that live inside me, I suggest you leave. Poseidon simply turned around and began to walk past him, cursing that he would instill fear in his being and swearing to take revenge by killing him in the worst way possible. Issei, what happened here? Barbassa, nothing, I couldn't fix on my own, sorcerer. Issei, okay. Now I need you to come see which champion we are going to send, he said, walking to where Brunhild is, followed by Hrist, Gear and Barbassa. They were walking for a few minutes until they reached a pair of doors that when they opened them they could see Brunhild stuffing herself with several cakes, while to one side there was a large jug of milk that was half finished, making the Valkyries nervous and Issei and Barbassa somewhat dubious. Gear, oh no, not again, she said very nervously, seeing her older sister's behavior. Issei, does he always do that? I hesitated to ask until he finally did. Hrist, only when she is very angry or stressed, she replied. Brunhild, this is very bad, she spoke while continuing to eat. Those damn gods have already managed to get an advantage over us by winning 2 rounds in a row. We must win the next one at all costs, or we won't be able to win this tournament, she complained until she received a notification, seeing it, causing her to panic when she saw that it was a message from the gods. Gear, what's wrong, sister? Brunhild, those gods, she said, earning everyone's curiosity. Those gods are really heartless, she said, showing what came to her, shocking her sisters. Gear, Poseidon is next to fight. Hrist, the gods certainly do not want to have mercy on us. Barbassa, sink Poseidon, he said, facing the blonde. He faced this tournament has certainly become interesting. Brunhild, what now? She said, showing holograms of the participants who were still in their ranks of the warriors that Dr. Strange brought. I can't think of anyone who would be able to survive the fury of the tyrant of the seas. Issei, as I see, this Poseidon is very different from the one I remember, he said, seeing the expression of the Valkyries and then turning his gaze to Barbassa, seeing Hector's look. I get the idea of what is going to happen. Hector Barbassa expressed a smile as he held the handle of his sword and then walked past Hrist and Gear, placing himself next to Brunhild, hitting hard the hologram that showed his image, name, dimension and occupation, surprising the 3 Valkyries. Selected champion: Pirate Lord Hector Barbassa. That was what was heard after Barbassa hit his hologram hard. The 3 Valkyries turned to look at him, seeing that he was expressing a big smile. Barbassa, I'll take care of him myself. Issei, what a surprise, Barbassa. Gear, but why does he do it? Barbassa, well, he said, turning to see Issei, we have an hour to prepare everything for the next round, right? Issei, that's right, Barbassa. Barbassa, well, if you want to know, I invite you to eat together in my cabin, he said, leaving the selection room. Brunhild, are you serious? Issei, very seriously, he said, leaving the room with the Valkyries. 30 minutes later, the 5 of them could be seen in Barbassa's cabin, sitting at a large table made of fine wood surrounded by paintings and valuable treasures, and the moonlight could be seen coming through the windows of the place. Issei, Gear, Hrist, and Brunhild were eating quietly while Barbassa just stared at little Gear. Brunhild, now tell me, she said, wiping her mouth with a napkin, why did you decide to fight Poseidon? Barbassa, haha, there's no need for so much cordiality. There's no one here to impress, little one. He remained silent for a few moments at Brunhild's question and then spoke to Gear. You're hungry, aren't you? He said/asked, listening to Gear's stomach growl since he hadn't eaten anything since Ragnarok began. Eat confidently. Just like that, Gear began to eat a little more quickly, leaving aside the knife and fork, causing Brunhild to just shake her head and hers to laugh a little, clearly showing that Issei was still doing his thing. Barbassa, here, to quench your thirst, he said, handing him a cup with a little water which Gear accepted. Do you want to try the apple? He asked, extending the apple, making the three Valkyries a little confused and scared by the captain's exaggerated generosity. Gear poisoned? I asked nervously. Barbassa, don't worry, I'm not a barbarian to kill your beautiful little one. Wrist, Captain Barbassa, why do you want to fight Poseidon? Barbassa, do you know what this is? He asked, taking out a gold coin with an Aztec skull carved on it, causing the Valkyries to deny it as Aztec gold. This is one of the 880 pieces delivered in a stone chest to Cortez himself, he explained, calling the attention of the Valkyries. They paid him to end the massacre caused by his army. But Cortez's greed was too much, so the gods of the world put a curse on him, he explained, while the Valkyries paid more attention to him. Any mortal who dares to remove a single piece from this chest will be condemned for all eternity. If at first we thought that it was a lie, and yet we took it out and spent it all on liquor, food, and pleasant companies. But the more we spent it, we realized that the food was nothing but ashes in our mouths, the liquor did not satisfy us, and even the most pleasant company did not reduce the lust, so we were cursed. Wrist, that's impossible. Barbassa, of course the curse can be broken. Every coin that was removed must be returned in its place, and in return there will be a payment in blood, he said as he stood up from his place and moved a few cards and maps, revealing the stone chest where he was already making the gold coins. That's why I agreed to participate, he said, leaving the coin with the others. Gear, and the blood that must be paid for? I asked nervously. Barbassa, don't worry, I already decided who's going to pay, he said with a smile, making the Valkyries nervous. Come with me, he said, getting up from his place and approaching some dark wooden doors, seeing how the Valkyries and Issei were behind him, ready to see what a curse from an Aztec god is capable of. The Valkyries just agreed, causing Barbassa to open the doors, leaving the Valkyries free to pass through, who proceeded to leave the cabin, seeing that they were no longer in Valhalla but rather on the deck of a ship. But how shocked they were, seeing a crew of dead working, until they noticed the presence of the Valkyries, causing them to stop and turn to look at them. None of the three knew what to say. They were really shocked, wondering if the Aztec gods were really that powerful. But Gear was horrified to see such a cruel act. She wanted to go back inside, but Barbassa held her by the shoulders and made her look at the moon. Barbassa, look there, the moonlight kills us as we really are. We are among the living and we cannot die, but we are not dead either, he began to explain, and then made her look at his face. I've been thirsty for years without being able to quench it. I've been dying of hunger for years, but I'm not dead. I don't feel anything, not the wind on my face, not the salt breeze or the warmth of a maiden, he said, extending his hand, which turned into bones with hanging skin, scaring Gear and his sisters even more. It's better that those pathetic gods start believing in ghost stories. This is one, he said, coming out completely into the moonlight and transforming. Barbassa proceeded to open a bottle of rum and gulp it down, causing Gear to watch the rum run down his spine, causing him to become even more horrified and rush into the cabin as Barbassa threw the bottle onto the floor and then laughed with his crew. Barbassa, what are you laughing at? Get back to work, he complained/ordered, making everyone go back to their posts, and making Brunhild and hers look at him with poker faces. Sailor One, you heard, get back to work. Barbassa, I want this impeccable ship for my entrance into the arena, he ordered, and then turned to look at Brunhild. So are you convinced now? Brunhild, Poseidon is all yours, she said with a somewhat evil smile, making Barbassa laugh maniacally, implying that he was ready to face the tyrant of the seas.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.